Hi, good morning. It is about 11:15. We are in the middle of our work session. We started by going into executive session. We are now going into our regular open meeting, but we didn't say the pledge before, so if we could all stand to pledge. Tim, you wanna?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for whoever just fell in the
whoever
hole.
just took a step.
I think there's a picture gonna come down. All right, our first item that we have up for discussion today is the Riverhead Climate Smart Communities Pledge, and we have Andrew Mattit. Matt, come on up. And do you guys want to come up? Mark, George?
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning,
Tim, nice to meet you.
Jody, nice to
Andrew.
meet you.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Catherine Kitt.
Catherine, I'm Tim.
All right, we do film our session, so once everybody gets up here, I'll have you reintroduce yourself.
Cell phone ringing.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's,
Catherine, do you want to lead off? This is from the Environmental Committee. You've organized this?
Sure, we've invited Andrew here today to talk with us about moving forward with the Climate Smart Communities Program. And I also invited, I'm the liaison to the Environmental Committee. And I also invited two people from the Environmental Committee. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm George Bartek, the co-chair of the Riverhead Environmental Advisory Committee.
Mark Hovner, I'm a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee.
And I'm Andrew Mannett. I work with the Sustainability Institute at Molloy College, and we have a contract with NYSERDA to coordinate.
Just need to speak
Speak
up.
up a little
I'm
louder.
sorry.
That's okay.
We have a contract with NYSERDA to coordinate the Clean Energy Communities program for several of the communities here on Long Island. The Clean Energy Communities program interlocks with the Climate Smart Communities program. Climate Smart Communities certification is one of the high impact actions that gets you credit for becoming a clean energy community.
Follow the bouncing ball.
Yes, and there are several of the other high impact actions that are under the Clean Energy Communities program also get you points for the Climate Smart Communities program. So NYSERDA pays for my time to be a technical assistant to the town of Riverhead to help you move forward with your clean energy and your climate planning and any efforts that you want to make towards those goals.
And we had done the resolution, I forget what day we had passed it to become a climate smart community. So we did that back in July of this year.
I thought we already had that in place, I was told from like before I was here, that there was a climate smart community that Riverhead was way back in like, well, probably when you were here, George, maybe, no? Anyway,
don't remember that.
for everybody. But we did it again, so.
Right. Well, and the Climate Smart Communities Pledge is the first step in the whole process of Climate Smart Communities certification. None of that is required. The state isn't making any communities take the pledge or do any of the further steps. But if you do move forward with the program, not only can get recognition on the state website, there's potentially you get more points when it comes to grants that the state does, things like that. And also, it's a framework to help you plan around these issues of energy affordability, clean energy, mitigating climate change, and adapting to climate change, resiliency for your community. It kind of lays out the issues that you should be looking at when you're making plans. So it's a useful exercise to go through, even if you're not interested in the recognition, just because it gives you that framework.
Some long-range planning.
So let me start by explaining the Clean Energy Communities program, because that's technically who I work for at NYSERDA. And I have some handouts here, I'll just pass around to you. These are the high-impact action items that NYSERDA has determined that if communities take them.
We just need a couple for the.
Sure.
board. Oh, you have to do one.
Here's some.
Thank you.
Yes, I was told to bring 15 copies of everything, so I did.
Good job.
So these are the 10 high-impact actions, and NYSERDA has determined that these are actions that communities can take. Some of them are more challenging than others, some of them are relatively simple, but they were determined to be things that if a local government did these things, they would be advancing the cause of clean energy in a significant way. That's why they're called high-impact actions. The town of Riverhead has already been approved for 3 of these actions. And if you complete 4 of them and they are approved, you are designated as a clean energy community.
Which
so-
four?
Which 3 have you done?
Yep.
Yes.
Streetlights?
You have done benchmarking. Yes, you
Unified solar.
passed a resolution to require that your town buildings be energy benchmarked. The energy code enforcement training, one of your code officials has been trained in enforcing energy codes, and you passed the unified solar permit, which is a fast-track permit for residential solar installations.
So solar is big then, because we have a project before us that's 22 megawatts that has been met with a
Right.
lot of opposition. So you're saying that climate
Well, that's-
ready and solar go hand in hand?
They do go hand in hand. This unified solar permit is for residential, though. It's the
Okay,
home rooftop solar installation is what that's about. These bigger utility scale solar projects aren't really under this program. That's more of
would
a-
that be under solarized clean heating and cooling or solar for all campaigns?
It could be under the community choice aggregation at some point.
Community choice aggregation is a little bit complicated on Long Island because
We got mine.
because we have LIPA, yes. We can't do the same things they do everywhere else in the state on Long Island when it comes to electricity because we have public power, which does not answer to the Public Service Commission.
Right.
It's a state authority on its own and makes its own decisions. So unless LIPA takes action to allow community choice aggregation, it can't happen until LIPA says, okay, we've figured out how to make it work on Long Island. But,
But
so.
isn't that what the objective is from the governor, trying to become like 15% renewable? I think it was originally by 2020, and now it got bumped up to like 2025.
The goals keep changing and getting more ambitious as we go along.
So the LIPA PPAs, what would that fall under, the power purchase agreements, and
Not-
on here,
Yeah,
anything?
not under this particular program.
Okay,
But what we are doing is we're converting our streetlights.
Yes.
So does the project need to be completed, or does it have to be in the process of?
To get
being
recognition for the LED streetlights in particular, you have to have converted 50% of your overhead streetlights to LED.
All right, we
And
should be
I-
there soon.
And I have been getting updates from staff here as
We should be done by January or
as- well,
February, yeah?
Then that would be your fourth high-impact action, and you could submit that on the website, the CEC website, and be recognized as a clean energy community. When the Clean Energy Communities program was first announced, I think 3 years ago now, there were grants that were associated with the first communities that got designated. Some of them were very significant grants. Those have run out on Long Island, but there is a second phase of the program that should be announced in the coming year. And we fully expect that there will be incentives attached to completing different action items. It will work a little bit differently. It'll be more of a point system, not just do 4 things and get a big grant. It'll be more, well, we're not supposed to tell you. We're not supposed to say because nothing is definite in the state until the numbers are crunched and the things are signed on the dotted line, but we fully expect that there will be some incentives attached to the next version of the Clean Energy Communities program. So
And
we believe-
NYSERDA does offer some, like with the electric charging,
Yes.
because we're putting that in as the north parking lot in downtown, we're putting energy charging station, and we're
Right.
working with NYSERDA to be able to get
Yes.
some offset for
They-
the funding for that.
They have, yes, they have
So-
some very, both NYSERDA has some very attractive rebates and grants for electric vehicle charging. And I believe DEC also has some rebates as
You
well.
can't use both.
You know, you can't double dip. But,
We looked into that.
Yes, but the Clean Fleets installing electric vehicle charging stations is another one of the high-impact actions, so you could technically have five
Five.
very shortly.
Good.
So
Yay.
that is the Clean Energy Communities program. So I think Riverhead is doing very well moving forward on getting to that designation. And as I said, one of the high-impact actions is Climate Smart Communities certification. That means that even though I'm being paid for my time through the Clean Energy Communities program, I can offer technical assistance on the Climate Smart Communities program and help you to plan and document the efforts you do on the Climate Smart Communities program to help you get to Climate Smart certification.
And we have a very active environmental
Yes.
committee, so I'm
Yes.
sure they will be tapping into your resources and to your time to be able to do that.
And I have a handout for the Climate Smart Community Certification Program. The Climate Smart Community Certification is somewhat more involved than the Clean Energy Communities.
Yeah.
There are a number of pledge elements, and under each pledge element, there are specific actions that you can take, and each of those actions gets you points towards certification, and there are levels of certification, so you can be certain. You know what, I should keep one of those for myself.
I just want to mention that Amanda, pronounce it Law, Amanda Loff is on the committee as well, she just joined us.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry, I was.
So,
Pledge here.
for certification, as I said, there are different levels of certification. And theoretically, higher levels, so the minimum level now used to be just certified. I believe now you have to get at least bronze to be called certified. And there's also silver and gold. They are, as far as I know, revamping what it takes to get gold right now, so we don't know exactly what the requirements are. But we do know what the requirements are for bronze or silver certification. And
By the way, we're going for the gold.
okay, that's great.
Andrew, I've also noticed that there's a shifting baseline for some of the easier things that are disappearing off that list as
Yeah,
we go.
they change the program slightly, they modify it if they find something is something that's just too easy to give points for, or they feel wasn't as impactful
Okay.
as
Got
they
it.
thought it would be, they'll kind of phase it out. To get bronze certification, I believe you need 120 points. Now, you get the mandatory actions to get any certification. The two things that you absolutely have to do. One is create the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, which you have already done with the advisor committee, and the other is to designate a staff or elected official as the Climate Smart Communities Coordinator. I don't know if you have.
We've done that,
If you have
that's,
done
Ken Testa.
Okay, great. So that gets you 30 points right there doing those two
We're on a
things.
roll.
90 to
Yeah,
go.
we're on a roll.
That's a quarter of the way to certification. So.
Yeah, right.
And then there are priority actions, and you have to take at least 4 of the priority actions to get to bronze certification. And this list tells you what's priority actions, what are mandatory actions, and they also tell you whether there are grants available to do these things, and they also tell you whether some of them are also clean energy communities, high impact actions. So again, they kind of kind of interlock.
So would we be better than to be doing these under the NYSERDA non-matching grant structure to get these done and then move them over to Climate Smart?
It
Can't you
really
do them
doesn't matter. You can
simultaneously?
do them simultaneously,
okay.
yeah. Yes, you can, anything that you can get a grant for, you should definitely be doing to get a grant for it. But then, as again, I can't tell you exactly, because I don't know exactly, they haven't told us all the details of the new
You had a
clean
guess,
energy.
what would it be?
I'm not even gonna try to guess. First of all, because they've been pretty tight with the
Okay,
information on the new program for clean energy
What
communities.
is that? Xeriscaping?
Xeriscaping is landscaping that is less water intensive.
Okay.
Native
Cactus.
plantings,
Okay.
rock gardens, things that you don't need to water every day to conserve
One downtown.
water.
Behind
Is
Maribel.
xeriscaping. And it's related to climate change for a couple of reasons. One is that as climate changes, potentially going to be more heat waves and droughts, and water will be scarcer and less available for maintaining landscapes.
A
And the
lot of
other-
succulents, huh?
Yeah, and the other thing is, just pumping water takes energy. So there is what they call the water energy nexus, and if you save water, you're also saving energy.
So like requiring or having a policy where our planning board is requiring rain sensors on sprinkler systems.
Yes, things like that, requiring, bioswales and, when it comes to zoning and site plans for new projects, things like that, requiring less water intensive landscaping are things that you can do as a community.
Cisterns to,
To capture water,
And
things
then
that,
to reuse.
things that, and again, with climate change, potential of heavier rain events, more rainfall at single times, to avoid your stormwater systems from being overwhelmed, requiring builders to make sure that rainwater is
Captured on
retained
site.
on site as much as possible, is something that you want to look at for essentially adaptation to climate change, not necessarily, because there are two aspects to planning for climate change. One is mitigation, trying to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, and the other is adaptation, doing what you need to do to plan for more frequent heavy storms, droughts, heat waves, all of those things. Things like cooling centers can fit in under climate change.
And both of those make us more resilient as a
Makes the
as a
town
result.
more resilient to all sorts of things, whether they're, climate change related or not, just, weather events. Sometimes, whether they were related to climate change or not, your town will be in a better place if you have these policies and this infrastructure in place. So I think that is mostly what I want to give you as the basics of the program. Again, to reiterate that I'm here as a resource for the town. You can contact me and ask me any questions you have about, next steps on this program. Any questions about, as new programs come down from the state, I do have emails from some of the folks in the town, and I've been sending out messages to them when there are these new opportunities for things like the charging station and the electric vehicle grants from the DEC. But I would like to get everybody's email address so that I can put you all on that.
Do you have cards for us?
The other question I have, I know that the website for the Climate Smart Communities is pretty good. Is there a template for the towns to use as if you, when you do stuff, so that we can put it as a page on our website so people can see what's being done?
I don't know that there is one that's set up to show people. I know that in Nassau County, the Nassau County Controller set up a website to let towns in Nassau County do that. I'm not sure if it's open to Suffolk County. But yeah, having something on your website is probably a good idea. Probably wouldn't be that difficult to just show, here are our plans, here check off the boxes, what we've done.
Yeah, just so people can see what's
Right.
going on.
Now, one of the things is, you did get credit for the benchmarking. I'm not sure, have you actually benchmarked your buildings and put the results up on the town website?
No.
No. That's what the resolution that you passed to get the benchmarking actually requires you to do.
I don't,
So I can help you.
so that's the energy that each building is using,
Yes.
and how, like, we just changed boilers, became more energy efficient, so
Yes.
as we, and the LED
Yeah.
lights, so as we change everything, it should be
Yeah.
ticked off, so we know that
Right.
we're reducing?
Yeah, the benchmarking, basically, it's pretty simple. The federal government has a web portal called Portfolio Manager. It's Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and basically all you do is you go into that, you set up an account, you.
Our engineering might have done that, I
You
don't,
might- well,
I don't know that it's on.
If they have, that's great.
Okay.
If not, I can send them
The information,
the
how to do it,
information on
okay,
how to do it,
perfect.
and send them a little PDF on the steps you go through.
So it, okay,
So all it is you enter a description of the building, you know, how many square feet, what it's used for.
we have all of that done already.
Yes, and you put that in that website, and then as you get your energy bills and your water bills, you enter them. And
Oh,
it's
that's-
pretty
okay.
simple.
Oh, so, okay.
And then you print out a report once a year, and you put the results of that report.
Okay, so we have all the
on your
basics done, it's
website.
just a matter of,
It's just a
whether
matter
the
of-
bills are entered.
Yeah.
Eh,
entering
I'm
it.
sorry, the Energy Star what portfolio?
Portfolio Manager. it's
Manager,
called.
okay.
It's,
Thank you.
the idea is, it's there to allow people who manage
Mhm.
fleets of buildings, essentially, of one building or more, whether they're governments or corporations, to assess the energy performance of their buildings against similar
And
buildings.
engineering has all of that information recently, within the past year,
Good,
year and a
okay.
half.
Is that an EPA thing?
Yeah, it's EPA.
Okay, okay.
Energy Star is an EPA program. So, like I said, when you pass the benchmarking resolution, that's essentially what the resolution said you were gonna do. You were gonna benchmark your buildings, which is essentially just say, how much energy is our buildings using per square foot? It's a pretty simple calculation that you just plug into this website, and you print out the report.
Okay,
I'm just gonna give you a list of some of the work that we have completed.
Oh, great.
Just so you have that,
Okay,
and things that and projects we're working on.
great. Yeah.
Let me give you a clean copy, I
Okay.
wrote on that one.
That's okay. And energy upgrades on your buildings is also potentially, if you can cut your energy use 10%, and you can show engineering reports that you have done that, then that's another one of the Clean Energy Community's high impact actions. But it has to be across all your buildings. So you add
oh,
up.
so it's not one, not.
Not in one building, it's,
Oh.
you add up all your buildings, and
Okay.
if you
Turn off
reduce
the
your
boiler.
energy use enough
It was
over
off
the
for a
whole
while.
fleet of buildings, 10% over the whole fleet of buildings, you get credit
Okay.
for clean energy upgrades. Do you have any other questions about either of the programs, Clean Energy Communities or Climate Smart Communities?
We have a landfill, that we're putting solar on, does that fall into any of the categories?
I believe there's a category for renewable energy in the
You
Climate
don't get
Smart.
to subtract any
communities.
of the energy you create off of the energy you used?
Potentially, if you install, I think if you install renewable energy on your buildings, you can, that can count towards
Be an
energy
offset.
upgrades.
So that might
You know,
be-
because theoretically it's being used on site or net metered or
Okay.
whatever. I'm not sure if it's like,
We're
and
selling
if
back
it's
to the
off,
grid.
if you're selling it back to the grid, I think it doesn't count the same way.
Okay.
I would have to look that up, to tell
Okay.
you the truth.
Okay.
Do a little research on that.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Is there any grant funding available for drainage structures? Because we have vast, properties that are vacant, that are either in agriculture or open space that, during the winter months, the ground gets very hard and the water runs off. If we
Right.
could put those into drainage basins and then reuse the water during the hot summer
Yeah.
months, like they do in other states like California and things of that nature,
I am
with the
not,
reservoirs.
I'm not familiar with any, but I can research it for you.
I'd be interested, because if we could, instead of the bioswales, create reservoirs where
Yeah.
the water can be pumped back onto the agricultural for the uses, rather than,
Right.
pulling from the
Yeah.
groundwater, that might be something that,
It's something that is worth looking into, I think, so I'll see if there's any programs. I'm not sure which state agency would be doing that, but I'll ask around and do the research and see if I find anything
Okay,
for
great.
you.
There's an innovative
My
system.
grandparents were ahead of their time with their rain barrels that they had
Yes,
on their
yeah.
property
Yeah.
back in the
Yeah.
day.
Sure.
Did any of you guys have questions?
One of the things that I was speaking with Andrew out on the hall is he is more than willing to, of course, meet with the committee and also meet with the coordinator, if indeed that's going to be Ken Testa, which I think would be really very productive.
Mhm.
If Ken has any questions at this point of how to start working on this.
By the way, he's one of our town engineers.
Okay, great.
Do we need a climate action plan before we start all this, or do we develop that as we go along? or-
It's, climate action plan is definitely one of the priority
Right.
actions you wanna take for, climate smart community certification. And, you know, planning is always a good idea when you're talking about some of these big complicated issues. But you don't have to wait to do the
Right.
action plan first to do some of these other things.
And part of this, you know, with the update of the master plan, addressing the environmental issues and, you know, long-term planning can certainly be incorporated
Yeah.
into
Good.
the assessment of that. So I think that,
Yeah.
that will be, it's very timely to be
Yeah.
able to address both of those
If you're
together.
already
Integration.
doing the effort and expense of a master plan, incorporating
And
climate
it's already
planning
in
into
the
it
agreement to incorporate
Yeah,
into
so-
the environment.
So then you've kind of already paid for it.
Mhm.
Definitely do those things together.
Yeah.
Just for
Thank you.
the efficiency of it.
Yeah, I'm
if
looking
nothing
at,
else.
2.5, 2.6, and it would seem that those would fit into the master plan. So by
Right.
doing that, I mean, we don't even have to, we certainly wouldn't have to wait until the master plan was completed and adopted,
Right.
just
In fact,
start.
you'd probably want to start, you would want to do them in coordination with the master plan.
Right.
You'd want to say, okay, we've got this community climate action plan.
Right.
It, you know, the findings, the recommendations from that should be built into the master plan so that, you know, your master plan isn't at odds with your community climate goals.
Right.
Good.
We want to
Yeah.
tie it all in together.
Yeah,
I mean,
you want to be, a
piece-
comprehensive plan should be comprehensive.
I mean, everything in 6, basically. I mean, it's climate smart land use. All of it can be
Yeah. built
addressed
into
there,
your-
whether it
into
all
your-
gets, you know, incorporated or not, but all of it can be brought
Right.
up to be addressed there.
Yeah, comprehensive plan with sustainability, that's what you're looking at,
Mhm.
a comprehensive plan. So,
Yeah.
and, you know, the other thing that is probably, useful right off the bat, and if you're already doing benchmarking, is kind of a first step too, is a greenhouse gas inventory. So you know what your emissions are from government operations.
I was gonna say, it's all good, okay.
Well, there's two kinds of inventories. There's the government operations inventory, and there's the community-wide inventory. The community-wide inventory is more involved. You know, you're kind of making some, getting data and making assumptions about what's going on in your entire community, not just the things you have direct control over as local government. So it's a bit more of an undertaking, but it's probably worth doing if you're also doing
That-
a
that
plan
would
to
be
address it.
A rough calculation of how much, like, fuel oil is used in the community?
Fuel
how much
oil, vehicle
electricity?
miles traveled, electricity use, yeah.
For the
and
town.
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
these numbers are available from various state agencies or from
So it's
the
compiling
SEG.
data
It's
that's already,
compiling
the
this- a
data
lot of
that's
it
already,
is-
you're not collecting the
yes,
data,
and-
you're just
And
compiling the
they
data.
have a methodology that has been developed for local communities to follow to do this, and you just, you know, kind of, you get this document and you kind of fill in the answers for
Mhm.
your community, and you go to the resources that they direct you to. So it's not an impossible, how do we ever
Sounds
get our hands
overwhelming.
around it? It's a
George
lot
almost
of-
fell off his
it's-
chair with
it's-
that one.
It's a lot of work, but it's not, you're
It
not
does.
reinventing the wheel. There's
George,
the
No big
steps,
deal,
the
but we just have to
methodology
do all of
has
these
been
things.
laid out for you. So it's something
have
that
to
can be
By
done.
the end of the day?
And, I worked with Suffolk County when they did one for the county, and we did one for all of Long Island. They have been done, I believe So it can be done. It's a little bit of a heroic effort, but it's not impossible.
All right, very good.
Is there credit that is being given in this, at least partially, for residences that already have solar?
This is
I don't know where.
yeah, the Climate Smart Communities has more to do with actions that the local government can take.
Okay.
So,
Like in
Again,
2012, when
having-
we put the streamlined process in for
Yes.
residents to be able
Right.
to come in and get solar permits for their
yes,
homes.
yes, so, yes, exactly like that. So if you adopt a policy
We did.
that encourages
Mhm.
people to put solar on their homes, or makes it easier for people to put solar on their homes, you
When
get
was
credit
that,
for that.
12?
You don't-
2012, I
they
think we
don't-
did that.
They don't expect you to,
You're
get
not going
credit.
out selling solar
You're
panels.
Well, the Solarize campaign is kind of like the town organizes a group buying. You put out an RFP for a solar installer, and you pick a solar installer that basically offers to give people in your town a discount if enough people choose to install.
Yeah, we did that, I
That's-
think, with the home energy audits also.
The home energy audits are offered for free by PSEG,
Mhm.
and actually, Sustainability Institute at Malloy College organized a program where
They could get
we
grants.
worked with towns here on Long Island to promote those to residents.
And there were grants, I think, up to like $5,000 or
There-
something for a furnace or for
Yes,
residents and
yes,
things of that nature.
there are rebates for people once they have the audit, not only rebates, but also better financing, things like that.
Yeah, they should do that again. There were a lot of people that took advantage of that.
Some of those things are still available, it's just not as well-known, but we are still promoting it to people. We still have what we call the Long Island Green Homes program that promotes those to local residents and kind of helps walk them through the process of getting the home energy audit and then getting the financing.
Yeah, because I remember when that first came out, because we had a bunch of people that did the home energy audits that had approached the town and said, we want to help you and, sign people up to get their home energy audits and
Yeah.
take advantage of the grant funds that are there, but I haven't heard from those people in many, many years.
Yeah, well, you know what, I will loop you in on our efforts.
Terrific.
We actually have funding from NYSERD on a different grant to promote those. So if there's a way that we can work with the town to promote
Yeah.
that to the residents,
Yeah.
that would be great.
I think it would be.
And actually, that's one of our goals as a committee, just to get the word out
Yeah.
on what is
What's
available.
Yes,
Yeah.
For
definitely.
example, we talk a lot about the septic systems and the grants that are available for people.
Yeah, that's,
But the
Lots to do.
Community Development Agency, we have CDBG money that we get from the county, so
Right.
when people come in and they need new furnaces or things of that nature, if we could do them and replace them with energy efficient furnaces or boilers, then, that,
And-
they might be able to work with our Community Development Agency and get
Right.
grant funding from NYSERDA for
And-
those efforts.
Yeah, and there is funding from PSEG for low and moderate income
Perfect.
customers. So you can kind of patch together a bunch of different
Yeah.
funding to help people
That's great.
who are, if they're coming into the heating season and they've got a boiler that's on its last legs, this is often a great way for them
Yeah.
to get that fixed before they have an emergency on their hands in the middle of
Right.
winter. So it's something we like to.
Well, thank you very much.
This is
Certainly,
excellent. You'll hear from us.
certainly you'll
Thank
hear
you.
from us. We have,
Give me on
Thank you.
speed dial.
Thank
we
you
have
for having
16
me.
people on the environmental committee, and it's a very active group.
Oh, that's great.
Thank
So
you
I
guys for
look
coming
forward
today.
to.
Thank you. I'm gonna
get you a card.
Thank you guys very much for, you guys are a new committee and you've been incredibly active and gotten
Thank you.
a lot done, since you started, so keep up the good work, we appreciate it. And thank
Good
you.
work.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Honestly, they work
Thank you.
24/7.
Very nice meeting you.
Day job.
All right, at this time, we'll move on to the next item, which is, future infrastructure improvements at Plant 5. If we could have, Frank and John Collins.
I'm out of your way here in a minute.
That's okay.
You were used to sitting up here, right?
No. Thanks anyway.
George, this is Frank, he's head of the water department.
Hi, how are you? Frank and Steve, They must have met you somewhere along the line.
Probably.
Hi.
Now, sit here, that's the short chair there. All right, so
Morning.
thank you guys for coming today. I know that you've spoken to most of the board members, is that?
Yeah, all
Met
of
with the
them.
all of the board members? But this is an issue I think that we need to be aware of. So we had gotten a letter, about Plant 5 and, you know, we've been fortunate, with the PFAS and PFOA. But there are some wells that we need to be able to make decisions on moving forward. And I'll let you explain the limits and where we're at and just some of your thoughts on addressing this issue.
Okay, well, thanks and good afternoon. We do have some detections of PFOS at Plant 5, well number 1. The last sample we collected, it was 12.3 parts per trillion. The current federal recommendation is 70 parts per trillion. If that were to remain in effect, we wouldn't have an issue, but we expect the state of New York to implement its own 10 part per trillion standard. In that case, this well would not be operational for us, so we're planning to finalize our map and plan and put a resolution together asking for $2 million to purchase granular activated carbon vessels that we'll use to remove this contamination from the water so we can use this well again.
And Plant 5, there's 2 wells
Yeah, there's
there,
2 wells.
so can you just
Yep.
explain?
So, there's 2 wells at this facility, screened at roughly the same depth. Only one of them is showing significant, I wouldn't even call them significant detections, but detections above the 10 part per trillion.
The
There's-
projected new
Yeah,
level.
the anticipated new standard from New York. The other well has got very low detections in 2 range, 3 range. So the problem would be if we detected in the other well, this would be a real water emergency during peak demand events for us during the summer. So we really need to treat it at least the one. At the same time we prepare for treatment, we've collected data for blending the wells, if the state allows us to blend them.
Right.
We now know that running the 2, these wells always run together, cause well number 1 has a naturally occurring manganese problem that we're also developing treatment for. But
That was
at,
the $3 million grant that we got.
yes, that involves a grant,
But it's a $6 million project.
yes,
Total.
yes.
But we did get a $3 million grant.
Yeah, yes, and we actually reached out to see if we could use some of this, so there's quite a, that's why the map has taken a long time, there's a lot to this, and even positioning the treatment on site, because they have to go through certain sequences, and something like a granular activated carbon vessel, it wouldn't be, unusual for a couple of years after we put them in and use them, that we pump this contamination out, we no longer see it, we wanna have access to these vessels, cause it's a tool in our toolbox to potentially use somewhere else. The district in the past had borrowed vessels for an MTB issue, then you pump it out, you no longer have it, you no longer need those vessels. But we would keep these for future use if the PFAS problem disappeared. If it didn't, we would continue to use them here.
And the reason that you can't borrow anymore is
'Cause
because everybody's
Every district is
experiencing this?
impacted by this. Some much, 1,4-dioxane, which you need them for as well, usually at a much more than we are. It's a blessing if this is the only impact we have from emerging contaminants.
So, just, this well right now is being blended as it's pumped out?
Yes.
Okay, so the,
Yes.
the one detection level that you're getting in the 5-1 is not what's coming in
Well,
somebody,
good
it's being
point, yes.
blended
There's-
before it gets to somebody's
Yes,
home at
there's
this point?
No data that we've ever collected indicates we've ever sent this water out at above the proposed 10 part per trillion level. Just over the last couple of years, we have the ability to look at this low of a number. We wouldn't know we had it in the earlier UCMRs where we looked for it, when you could only see it at 20 parts per trillion and 40 parts per trillion.
So the
Just-
tests have changed, so they're more
Yeah, the
sensitive
ability
now
to
than they
see
were previously?
lower levels, but had we had a more significant PFAS problem at the wells, we may have seen it at those 20 and 40 part per trillion detection limits years ago when we did early UCMRs. So, we're hoping that it doesn't show up at the other well, and someday we pump it out of this existing well, and if we put the manganese treatment on here, we're able to use this well throughout the year, not just seasonally like we use it now. We're gonna move more water out of the ground and have a better shot at getting it out of there.
So this was just basically an update, have you, contacted for the manganese can we use any of that grant funding?
I spoke to New York State, and since we already accepted our grant and all the paperwork
It's
signed,
been
we
in.
cannot. However, we are eligible to apply for another grant
Okay.
at the same site. And in the long run, if we get that grant, we'd have more money, because it's a whole separate grant.
When do
So-
we anticipate that the state is going to be dropping the levels from 70 parts per trillion down to 10 parts per trillion?
That's.
That's a
Everybody-
$1 million
Yes,
question,
$1 million.
$2 million
We think as
question.
early as this spring
This
is
spring,
what
possibly.
we expect.
Okay.
So it puts us all in a very difficult position.
And where are the other water districts as far as the PFAS and PFOS?
They're-
Same place.
Yeah, same place.
So, but do we know what they're, like, if we're testing out at 12 parts per trillion, do we know where everybody else is, whether they're at 15 parts per trillion, or 20 parts per trillion, or 30 parts per
Covers the
trillion?
whole spectrum.
It's
I mean,
all over the place.
yeah.
I've seen levels as high as, across the, without even getting into detail of who, but I've seen hot levels as high as 200.
Wow.
And I've seen levels, most of them I would say are in the 15 to 25, 30 part. But I have seen as high as 200, yeah.
There are
So-
other districts, though, that have a bigger problem than Riverhead does with it.
There are districts,
Absolutely.
when you combine 1,4-dioxane into
Right.
it, there are districts that are looking at dire emergencies.
Ooh.
Interesting.
And they're clamoring right now, and,
Right.
yeah.
But
So-
that's why I
Sure.
think it's so important, as you were saying, that we need to get the piece of equipment to be able to, because there's not going to be any ability to borrow from somebody
No.
else to remove it. And if they tell us we can't blend, then we're gonna be down a well, and, we don't have backup wells here at this point. So, the investment hasn't been made for the backup wells. I think that's a conversation for another day, cause
Yeah.
that's something that should happen moving forward, but we are where we are right now. So.
But I think that's an important campaign to fight, is for the blending, especially when you have two wells side by side, because if we
Absolutely.
blend, then what would that bring us down to?
The
What are
last
our
sample I
levels now?
collected was, the two wells running together are 6.8 parts per trillion.
Blended.
Blended.
Yeah, blended.
Good.
So.
But we always blend right now.
Yeah, that well
We
has
have-
always been blended
Right,
because
but
of
it's-
manganese.
But it's not permitted
Yeah,
by the
we don't
state,
know
so we
yet,
have to
because-
continue that campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we need to also prepare for more aggressive water conservation in the event that the vessels, there's no way we'll get them online by the spring if they implemented that early. And if they don't allow blending, we are in a tough spot for the summer demand. So there's three components, is the treatment, the blending case that we're developing data for, and a more aggressive water conservation program if none of these come to light in the proper time.
So the grant funding that you were looking at, what is that one of the yearly grants, or are they doing an ongoing, is it a rolling grant?
It's not, it's an annual grant. The one we received was the 2018 Water Infrastructure Improvement Act for drinking water projects. There was one in that 2019, which we didn't, I think we did apply for the Well 2 project, we applied for that.
Yeah.
And now 2020, we'll have another one. When it'll show up, I don't know, it's usually, the deadline's usually right around September to submit the application. Right now, we're working on preparing for that, but it's usually right around August, September. And then you usually find out right around November, beginning of November.
So would that be applicable to this if you had to move forward?
Yes.
You can backtrack by the time everything's done?
It's a grant you're eligible for the grant even if you've constructed already.
That's what I'm wondering, yes,
Yeah,
okay.
I think you have a 18-month window or something like that
Okay.
after construction is completed, so.
Okay.
Going back to what Jody had mentioned about blending and pushing to make sure that we hopefully will be able to do that, one good thing Frank had explained to me is that we do have a resident from the town of Riverhead who sits on the state level.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
I think will push for this
Mhm.
as best he can, Stan Carey.
Yeah.
And that will, that's a plus in our pocket, I think.
It
Well,
is.
the goal is to lower the levels, so if that's the way to do it, then I can't see them telling us we can't.
Yeah.
That's what you hope.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
In a real, in a real world,
Yep.
yes.
This is, most of the systems in New York haven't even tested for PFAS yet, because only large systems and
Yes, only
medium systems were, large systems were required to, some medium systems were randomly selected. Small systems were not even testing, so New York is in an unusual position to implement the lowest standard in the country with approximately 800 systems that haven't even looked for it throughout the state.
Frank, one thing you mentioned that I found really interesting, and I had no idea, and I'm sure many of our viewers don't either, is where are these coming from? What are some of the
Well,
common uses that?
PFAS is strongly associated with fire retardant foam, but, and most of the projects I've worked on involve fire retardant foam
Mhm.
testing, or car fires, or fuel fires, but it's a component in all of so many personal care products, Stainmaster carpets, Gore-Tex clothing.
Fabric softener, you
Yeah,
said.
fabric
I was
softener
really
is a big one. In
surprised to hear
fact,
that.
collecting the
Teflon.
sample.
Teflon, right,
Yeah,
right.
Teflon is a huge one, because we use it, we had to take it out of all of our sample points and stuff. When you're talking about part per trillion is 1 second in 64,000 years, it's such a small number. We're seeing these now, not from the future, not from big industrial contamination, but from personal care products that we use in our everyday life.
Right.
So it's important we try and get them out of the environment, so we don't have to deal with them here.
Well, that's something our committee can work on.
I hope so, I hope so.
Yeah, that's public awareness,
Yeah,
that would be
It
perfect.
goes to say, if, you know, it is that whole instance with xeriscaping or conserving water.
Mhm.
Conserving water means less irrigation, and we all
Mhm.
know that irrigation is
That's our biggest challenge in
Right.
the summer, because our wells have capacity to provide drinking water and clean water, but once you turn those irrigation systems on, it's using the clean water for the irrigation, and the amount of water used from the wells that are treated is incredible.
It is.
So I think that becomes a huge education factor for people to reduce their watering during the summer and conserve there, so.
Especially when you see in the summertime and it's raining
Yes.
outside and the
Yeah.
irrigation systems on a huge shopping plaza are just kicking away, going on and on and on.
we
and
like
it's-
that,
But-
'cause that's when we have water.
That's when
we're
we make
selling
money,
water.
yeah. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
We have water for that.
That's if they're connected to
That's-
the
you're
public
right.
water
That's if they're
system, which
connected to the public
most
Right,
of
right,
our,
yeah, which now they're,
most of our big shopping centers are on sewers, so when you pay for the water, you're paying for the sewer also. So a lot of those big box stores have converted to irrigation wells rather than using the public water system. But then
Or
you
they
run into
meter
the
out.
iron and
and we now
the,
require them, right?
Yeah,
to do that?
they're metered
Well-
out, but they're still using our water.
A lot of them are using our water,
They're just
some have
metered
gone
out.
to wells. Frank
go
has
either way.
recently had a conversation with the DEC, and they're not all too happy with that stipulation that we threw in there.
They don't
Yeah.
like
And well,
that,
we
because
said,
they
well,
want
we're
us
n-
to be able to manage
Yes.
essentially the water resource entirely. If we have separate irrigation wells outside of their realm of jurisdiction, they're sort of out there pumping from the same resource we need. Their feeling is if we control that, we have a better control of the overall resource.
Yeah.
But we don't have an infinite supply of water, so moving forward, I'm gonna work very closely with you guys, the planning board, our planners within the town, to really get a much more aggressive water conservation plan. And I think you're gonna see this almost to a panic state throughout Nassau and Suffolk County, because many districts are in a much tougher position than us. Some, up to 75% of their supply is impacted by emerging contaminants. So they're sort of leveraging that against the state, saying, well, we're not gonna send this to system, you know? So we're in a tough spot. We could be in a much worse spot, and we're gonna be like every water district, trying to adapt and to the changing conditions.
but it's interesting, cause when they had the Pine Barrens fires, you know, that's what we used to put out the fires, whereas this spray fire foam.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was a big
Yeah.
unknown at the time.
Yeah.
And it was thousands of acres that they put out the fires with the spray fire foam that, but, you know, that's right off the expressway where those fires were, and, we
Now,
know
yeah,
runs to
Pine
the
Barrens
largest
area,
body of
yeah.
water, so I think it went over to the
Now,
Southampton side.
I've worked with Riverhead Fire, and their Riverhead Fire is using a foam that does not contain PFAS or PFOA or any of the major six, but
20 years from
But
now.
20 years from now, there'll
There'll
be
be a
something
problem
in
with
that.
that,
that-
yeah.
It is, I mean.
Riverhead has been very proactive in making sure they're not using that stuff.
Good.
I just need
Good
to
for
talk
our
up a
fire
little bit.
department.
I always get for yourself.
So,
Get
good
the
job.
arrow.
So when do we expect that the,
January.
manganese removal system will be fully in place and functional?
I think, we've kinda slowed down on that, just figuring out what we're gonna do with the PFAS first.
But we can't use the grant money towards this.
But one impacts the other.
Yeah, the way
so-
they work in series is important, and the layout throughout the site. The site is not enormous. The manganese plant is much bigger, it has basins involved, and like I said, you don't move a manganese plant around, but you may move a GAC vessel around. So I wanna position them so I can get them out of the site if we don't have this problem, and put them somewhere else someday. So we're at the site trying to figure out, how does it make the most sense to set this up?
Yeah. You know, the other thing is we wanted to make sure we could put this treatment in. You don't wanna build a $3 million manganese plant, all of a sudden get PFAS, and then I'll turn the well off.
Yep.
You know,
Right,
You're sitting,
right.
spinning your wheels and saying,
Sure.
that was a waste of money. So we wanna make
So-
sure that we're okay and we have the right guidance and we're going forward and we know what we're doing.
Well, I think it's important that we're being proactive.
Yeah.
So thank you, guys.
No problem.
Yes.
So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Your first presentation up, Frank.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice job.
We were nice to you.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Made a bigger introduction of it. to the community.
Thank you, John.
Bye, John.
All right, now we will move on to changes for special event application, and all those involved, come on up.
Fill the
Yes,
table.
everybody else in the room.
And Diane has copies for us, right?
What's that?
Diane has copies for us?
I think Carol does.
Diane was here.
All right, I think Patty was.
I know it got emailed, but I didn't wanna make a copy, cause if we're all making copies, and you made copies, and Diane made copies, that's a lot of
We
copies.
just talked about
Lot of trees.
conserving.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Dean, how are you? I'm good. Bob, how are you?
Hey,
Bob, how are you?
Hello.
Greg, how are you?
Make sure you behave.
We are back for everybody's favorite topic,
I'm gonna push you down a little bit, Bob.
2:55.
I'm gonna let Carol sit here.
Okay, she is coming.
Carol's, yep, she's coming down.
Good.
Get one of the comfy chairs.
Do we have a copy of the application too?
The copy of
Proposed
the
new
application,
application.
yeah, this is one that was, changes were made. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I know,
The light show.
and the fee schedule's on the back,
you know,
too.
it has
A
been
lot of
busy.
people writing about
They're
it.
having some operational challenges,
Yeah, I
but
saw the fee schedule came
just
over this morning.
internal, the customer doesn't realize it.
And that is
It's going well.
They're having trouble with stuff
I don't
popping out.
know.
Yeah, popping.
That's the way they got it all lined, and that's
Did
why
you bring
Goldman
it?
had to
Do you
be-
have it?
I actually should have my version.
Is this the original application or a new one?
No, this is the new one.
Okay.
This is proposed new one, or-
This is the proposed new one.
This is, I don't know if everyone has, and see, they did go to town board, which is the, transmittal from the Business Advisory Committee with their comments, so just so.
With
that
their
we have-
comments on this?
It
That's-
should be on
they're-
everything,
they're-
that should be their comments on the code and their short form, or no?
I'm just wondering, the question is,
There's a lot.
are
going on
their
there.
comments addressed in this?
That's
Not
what we're gonna
all.
go, that's what we're gonna go through.
Well,
We have three separate separate things, because it was, the business advisory has proposed stuff, as well as I don't know if your short form is in here, an application form. Then we have the proposal, that has looked at their comments and been taken into account, and then the proposals that are written by the town, which is this one that Bob handed us. So if you take the packet from the business advisory, and the packet that Bob gave us, those two packets, as well as the,
Form itself.
Wait a minute, we need a bigger table.
application
I know,
itself.
there's a lot
I
going
didn't
on.
get the, so, you have new
What
code?
didn't you get?
Yeah, this.
Which
I
one
was
of these?
asked
You
to,
should-
I
you
was
should
asked to
have-
draft something yesterday,
Right.
have
So
with
they should
some
have,
new code, and I think I gave you that.
that was all sent
Bob?
to you guys the other
Thank you.
day.
Okay.
And this was, Bob had just tweaked it a little, but that had been sent to you when we arranged the meeting, the original one, the changes.
Really?
It should have been, yeah.
I missed that, I'm sorry, I didn't get,
All right, well, it's okay, we can go over it now, it's not a big deal.
this
Okay,
week,
let's do the code first, okay? So if we take the code here,
Wait,
which
the
one?
chief does- the
Let's
chief-
take the code that Bob has handed you.
chief doesn't have a
All right, do
copy.
we have code for?
Yeah, I think Carol's got more back there.
If we take the code Bob has given us, and we take the code from the business advisory, so if you lay them side by side, we'll go page by page, how's that?
All right. So who didn't get one?
Chief
We need
needs a
some
business advisory one?
I got
Yeah, I
enough
need
going
to-
on.
You got, I know, it's very confusing.
Not
Yeah,
to use
pass
a
those
business
down.
advisory. one.
Trust me, I was up at.
That's the one
Did
you
you
had.
keep one for yourself?
Yeah.
No, this
I
is
don't
the,
have
this
the
is the
business
version, Bob, this
advisory
is the same version you gave us, right?
There's just a little minor change.
All right,
that
so we're
was
getting
made
rid of the one
because-
you handed us? and
No,
we'll-
no, no.
Carol copied these this morning,
Okay, well, let me just,
from what you sent.
Boy,
did
my-
it have, did it have the underlining on, I found one spot where it showed underlining, which shouldn't have been
Oh,
underlined.
it was in the back, that's fine,
Yeah, it
the
was in the
language
very-
didn't
and
change,
it
that's
wasn't
fine.
a change,
That's
so
fine.
like, wait a
So is
minute.
that the only thing that's
That was, I
different?
think, on the liquor liability,
Yeah.
liquor, yeah.
That's-
It shouldn't have
Okay.
been changed.
That was,
so I-
that was,
Yeah.
one. Is that the only thing that
That
was
was
different?
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well,
so
well,
let's,
actually, one other thing,
With the
one
town
other
of
thing,
Rosen.
one other thing.
That's Carol.
Before I lose track, on
It's
the
next.
It's gonna be
definition,
about 3
Here,
days
I'll
worth
have
of
one of
work.
those.
on the definition.
We have that.
Should I do-
Here for this.
We've never seen.
I want everybody to be on the same one.
Hero for us.
So, everybody has the other one. Carol, I'm just gonna leave yours over here till we get to the point, and then Bob, when we get to the point, you can just say what the changes are, okay?
All right,
Let's
all
do
right.
that, so that we're all, because I don't think there's
All
enough
right, we
copies.
got a plan?
Yeah,
Let's move
okay,
forward.
so let's go.
Catherine, you got any snacks?
Said, why didn't they bring heroes?
Okay, let's go to the first page, right? First,
Of which one?
no, you were looking at them simultaneously.
Which one?
Side by side.
We are looking, we have the business advisories copy, which is
And-
in this one.
And Bob's revision.
And
Okay.
Bob's revision that he handed us, okay?
Just so we're clear.
So, Carol, do you have this, all this?
I don't have, the business advisory.
You can share with
Yep.
me.
Okay, there's another one. All right?
Bob has an extra.
So, on the first page, we're gonna just go through till there's no changes, okay?
Well, Article 1, there was no change.
Okay,
So the whole provision from Article 1, Section 255-1 through 255-7, which is really dealing with parades and assemblies, there were no proposed changes from the Business Advisory Committee, and there's no proposed changes. And so, in fact, once we get to the point where we're prepared to go to public hearing, I'm gonna try and delete as much as possible, so that we just go to public hearing on the stuff that's being changed.
Okay, so, in Article 2, for definitions, we are not changing anything,
One change.
just the if
Uh,
required.
Charitable organization, well, there's 2 changes in charitable organizations.
Okay.
Can I like just get on that page? What the one?
You are on
Page
page 3,
three.
Page 3 on this one.
and
Page
on page
2 of the
3
other.
of the next one, they're both on page 3.
Well,
And it's under,
Three.
it's,
Oh,
it's,
this one's three. I thought this was two.
255
okay,
-8.
it's, yeah, 255-8 for definitions.
This is 3, and then it
Is
starts on 2.
everybody on
Yeah,
255?
but
there.
what
But the
we're
first
talking
change
about
is
is
on page
page
3.
one.
Bob, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we're on 255-8 definitions. The one change that we have in the definitions is, the first one is for charitable organizations.
Correct.
So I believe that they are both in sync with each other for both the business advisory and for the town, and it's just adding if required. Correct? And we
Yeah.
took out the C3, so it's 501C.
Correct. Yeah, and for some reason, mine had C3 in one draft, so that the 3, I don't know if that's actually in the code or still, or out, because I know we had some discussions about the C3.
But what about like the Lions Club? Are they a 501 or are they a 504?
We're a 501C, but we're not a 501C3.
Right, so everyone that's charitable, they're all.
It's just a different
subsection
subsection
of the
of
same, okay.
501C3.
Okay.
If you go to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Code, and look at 501C, then it says a whole list of.
Okay, so it's the
exempt
last.
organizations.
Okay.
That's
So
right.
my,
The
Bob,
501C covers it all in
That's,
in
yeah,
whole.
that's, okay.
And
What
our
would-
code as it exists now does not have the 3. This is
Okay,
our
that's what-
code
that's what I was-
now.
Good,
Okay.
okay.
So
Mine
what
does.
would, like, a 501c3 be, for example?
Well, the difference between a 501c3 and other 501, so like the Lions Club, right? They will take in donations, but then they give it to somebody else. Where a 501c3 takes in the donation and then expends the money. So it's just the different way when you're taking in, as a not-for-profit, taking in money, it's how you then give out the money.
So like
After.
Townscape and the Country Fair, they're probably a 501c3 because they take the money in and then they spend it on the plantings on Main Street and they spend it on other things to beautify
like,
our town.
You guys are different, the Lions is different because
We
you.
come under Lions Club, we come under Lions Club International, we are a subset of them, and it's because it's almost like a fraternal organization, like the Moose.
Correct.
Right.
A service organization, and it's, I think it's C4 or C5 is under the Internal Revenue Code.
Well,
We're not
I-
entitled to be exempt of sales tax, for example, as a 501c3, they're exempt from sales tax. They're treated just a little bit differently. They received that letter from the IRS that says you are specifically exempt on the 501c3, whereas we receive a letter from IRS that says we're under the other section.
Well, I would like to know, under the special permits that the town clerks receive, which ones are 501cs, which ones are 501c3s, which one are 501c4s, if I can
Yeah,
finish.
yeah.
So, because if Townscape and the people that run the country fair are a 501c3, then I think they should be included in here, provided that the money is given to beautify a town park or a town project or a main street.
This is
Well,
including
that's what it
all of
does.
501Cs, whether it's sub 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's including every 501C.
Oh, 'cause
The
that's not what I was
subs to
hearing
that
from Bob.
is 3, 4, whatever
Yes.
it may be.
When it was adopted, it was done under the narrower scope C3.
Correct.
And we discovered that we had been too
Right.
narrow in our inclusion, and that there are other entities out there that are not C3, they're C4, C5,
Right.
whatever.
Okay,
But they
so
would
this
still be
covers
considered,
everybody.
yes,
This-
yes.
this is
Okay,
just
good.
a generic
This is a blanket,
501C.
right.
Yep.
That's all I
And it-
wanna
and it-
check.
That's, okay.
Okay, so
All right, moving along.
Moving along, we are at, no other definitions were changed, we're now at, 255-9, permit required application.
That's the next change.
Yes.
Page 5 on the 10.
So this is where we had a lot of, we had, when we originally did it, we changed the size of the gatherings, blah, 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 blah. So what has, this is now, we have the business advisory, and then we have the town's version here. So what the change in substance is that we're changing the short form from 100 to 1,000, upping from the previous town code of 750, which is also the recommendation of the business advisory. And then for the next application, it became a large gathering, and that was from 101 to 3,000 instead of 2,500. So that was also on recommendation.
1,001.
1,001, yeah, I'm sorry. I know that the business advisory had done almost up to 5,000, but in talking to the staff, there is a difference between those size gatherings, and the paperwork and things that needed to be done. So the next one, instead of going above 5,000, it captured everything at 3,001 to 5,000 or more.
Okay, so I'm still back on 255-9A1.
Okay.
Where it says, where the business advisory crossed out, where at the 100 to 1,000 attendees are expected, and they crossed out at the event, and the event
Right.
duration is 12 hours or less per calendar day,
And-
and they put in at any one time.
Okay.
Which I think makes sense, what they put in, because when you have the Titan events, or you have different events where people are coming in at different times and not everybody's arriving at like 12 o'clock and leaving at 2 o'clock, that I think that what they put in here makes sense.
The only thing with that is, we did discuss it, and I did discuss it, and you guys can weigh in on that. The difference is the application. So you can have an event with 5,000 people and have less than 1,000 people there at one time, yet the requirements for the staff to do is they have to address it on the whole of the event. It doesn't affect anything else, because I think the original thought was they had to accommodate for the parking, for the total number at the whole time of the event, which we realize doesn't work, right? I mean, and that hasn't been done. It's for the rotation coming through, so that can be
I
addressed
only
at.
got this stuff this morning, so this is all
Okay.
news to me.
All right.
I'm trying to
But-
follow along.
So
but-
basically what it's doing, this doesn't affect you at all. This wouldn't affect you at all, this portion of it. Because this is just saying what application they need to complete for the size of the event.
Okay.
So what we used to do, which became a real big hassle, is that people would say, okay, I'm only having 200 every hour.
Mhm.
And you could have 6,000 people coming to the event. So all this is doing is capturing the application size. That's
Okay,
it.
but,
Can I have a question?
Yes.
I mean, and, so, if there's an event, right, and you expect 3,000 that day, but it could be 500 at a time, you're saying you need to file for 3,000, and you're saying that does not, cause anything else to happen, but I would say, after talking to the police chief, if he sees 5,000, he's not gonna know, or 3,000, to him, that's just gonna.
No, it's gonna be captured in the description of the event. Because you have to give as you did with your application, you have to give a description of the event. So in the description of the event, you would address that. So, but they still need to know the overall total population coming to that area on that day. So, I mean, if that's what it's capturing, so you're capturing both. You're capturing the total event size as well as the traffic coming through on the hour.
Okay, I just don't understand somebody needs to explain the wisdom of that to me, because it would almost be like, you know, Walmart sees, 50,000 people a day, they don't see them, and when they submitted for their permit, they don't submit for how many people, they're gonna see for the entire day, it's for how many people they can accommodate any given hour, that's why their
Well,
parking is
that's
there.
exactly right, will be captured here, but the fee to review the whole process is still the same. So the only difference here is whether it's going to be what the fee is. The only difference between a short, a large, and massive is the fee that the town charges to be able to process the application, that's all this does.
Well, it actually does a little bit more, because it says the special event, and in Bob's legislation, the way it's written, short form application is crossed out, and it says small gathering application.
We only have one
So what's
application.
the difference between small gathering application and a short form application?
It's all one application, except certain things need to be included when it's the long form application, which we can get to after that. So long form application will have, I'm just trying to see where it goes to. So, long form application will just be providing more information basically as far as safety goes. So if you have over 1,000 people, you need, I forget what they're
You
called.
need the
Crowd
managers.
crowd managers. It will it may change whether you have to have an EMS person there. It may change whether you have for your egress and things like that. It may change whether the amount of police that need to be there. So that's different. So if you have a longer application, there'll be more information that you need to provide to be able to run the event.
So this is at one
Looking
time
for
you're
this.
talking about? What you're saying, you need the longer application, let's say you're doing a concert, you've sold 3,000 tickets, that's the long application, but.
It's all the same application, but you need to include other things with it. There's no separate application
Why
for
does
short
it
and long.
I just find that complicated, only because if I know I'm doing an event, I'm gonna have, I'm doing something, I'm gonna have 300 people every hour and a half, I know that, that's the way I'm selling my tickets, and I'm gonna end up having 3,000 people. To say I'm having 3,000 people, I'm not. I'm having 300 people
Well,
at
that's
each
what
event.
but that's what you would that's part of the application. You would say, I'm having my overall event, we'll have I expect 3,000 attendees at my event, and they will be arriving in waves. I expect to have 350 people at any point during the event, and then that gives the police the information to know that during the course of the event, there's going to be possibly, 3,000 people throughout the day, and there'll be 350 at any one time. But if the police were to know, okay, the event's gonna have 5,000 people, and they're all coming at the same time and leaving at the same time, then that's a different evaluation that both the services need to have. So that both information needs to be included for them to be able to, know what needs to be in place for the event.
But I would think if you're having 3,000 people, the overall number, I mean, even if you're having so many at a time, but the overall number is still 3,000, and, you still have that many cars coming in, and that many things that you have to adjust.
Cars coming in for 300
and-
people at a time.
And how would we monitor too, who out the town?
But it
How many are there at a time?
It doesn't,
It's still 3,000 in the big number.
and it doesn't change
I wanna hear
anything.
Dean's
Yeah.
trying to get
So
something
here's
in.
my experience, I think both data points are critical,
Yeah.
right? They're both critical. To me, the more important data point is at any one time. Because let's face it, the roads have a capacity, parking has a capacity, all these things have a capacity. So for me, that's the critical piece. So what I would do it is at one time, and that's why we made the recommendation, and then we added the second question is, how many overall?
Well, actually, no, because it's changed here, you guys changed it to at one time.
Right, so
Yeah,
that's what I'm still proposing here.
but as you said, both items are critical,
Mhm.
and so we're both saying the same thing, we can add it to have both. If you wanna put both in here, attendees are expected at the duration of the event and at any one time. But
Right.
that's captured in the application, and that's why it isn't written specifically out in the code.
The way this is written, you could put people into different categories.
Well, think of it this way. New Year's Eve, restaurants have different time sittings for their dinners.
Right.
They have 3 different time sittings. They're gonna have 3,000 people altogether, but
Right.
they're only gonna have 1,000 for
Right.
each time sitting.
And it
Right.
doesn't,
When you do an event, you don't know that you're gonna have all 1,000 people at a time, but you were expecting to have 3,000 over the course of the day.
but sometimes
Three-
you do know.
3,000 could actually be there at one time. So in lieu of making this form out, everybody needs to be prepared for that, in the fact that you could have 3,000 there at one time. You probably won't, I get that. But
So
there's
you
no
have some
guarantee unless
cases-
you're selling time slots to guarantee that you're not gonna have all 3,000 there at one time.
Right, and if the restaurant's going to have 1,000 over the course of the day, they need to be prepared for 1,000.
And to
Right.
expand on what Tim was just saying, is that, you know, we wanna know the overall, because you're selling time slots, let's say you're running a race, you're going in waves. There's 250 or 350 people in a wave. However, and we wanna know how many waves there are in the approximate time
Right.
over the course of the event, because a lot of times now we have vendors here, it's a beautiful day, a lot of places have bands or music, you know, some of them do alcohol sales afterwards, and so a lot of these people decide to stay for a while, so now you've got additional people carrying over. You don't have just the initial 350 that's in that wave, you've got a couple hundred from the wave prior, and perhaps the wave prior to that, and then you've got people who show up early. So now, instead of having 350 people there now, I've got 1,500 people there now.
But you would-
Which is something that I think the chief and his officers, as well as ourselves, and these things that we've seen in the past at some of these events, which is one of the reasons why we would like to know the overall expected total, as well
Right.
as
I
the
think we're all
total
saying
at
the
any
same
one
thing,
time.
is just what piece of data creates the category? It's critical to know it.
And why is that?
Critical, why is what?
Why is it critical to know, I mean, we haven't been through the rest of it, but why is it critical to know how many people are gonna be, like, this is saying what's called this is just defining, small gathering, large gathering, mass gathering. That's all it's doing. It's saying what number of people create small, large, and mass. Other than that, this isn't doing anything at this point.
Right, you're just putting people to ask more information on something that could be very simple to do, so you're making.
But we haven't gotten up to that point yet, so because we did incorporate a lot of the changes that you've recommended also.
Okay.
So we're not up to that point yet. All we're saying is, this is defining the size of the event. It's the number of attendees overall, and what it will be called small, large, or massive. That's it, that's all this is doing.
All right, we can go.
Which is the first thing that I see wrong here, is that if there's only one permit application, then why are we saying that there is a special event application for small gathering application, a large gathering application, and a massive gathering application? Like, application should be stricken, because there's only one application.
Okay, then when put criteria, whatever you wanna,
No,
whatever you
you
wanna
just-
put.
You just push off, special event, small gathering, where 100 to 1,000 attendees are expected at the event. So you don't put application, just cross out application on all
Okay.
these, because there's only one application.
Okay, fine.
That's why I was getting confused, because I'm looking at the application, I'm like, where's the small? Or we keep it, small gathering application, 100 to 1,000, and do 3 separate applications, because there's different criteria for each one. Because if you're going to say a small gathering application, you only have to, on your special event checklist, answer items 1 and 2
I think we're,
No, you have to answer everything, even for a small.
for everyone.
For everyone.
Carol, you have to
Okay.
go louder.
Okay.
okay, so
You
let's
ready
just.
for this, Carol?
No. No, not at all.
All right, we'll
Okay.
move on to B now, and this would be special event, small gathering, okay, so we'll turn out, so you wanna put information, not application, I don't know what you wanna put here.
Just put special event, small gathering, because it's already been defined that a
remove
small gathering is 100 to 1,000, so there's only one application, so just cross out applications.
I mean, on the application itself, you can have those numbers and circle them, and then
Yeah.
you'll know what it is,
I think that's
right?
a great
You don't
idea.
need, you know,
There is a checklist on the application.
is there, so
Yes.
that
Yes.
solves that problem.
Okay.
Well,
So,
Kind
all
of.
right, so we are
total people per day.
Moving on.
going on to C.
Next
Oh,
page
here,
could
this
say-
is the other thing with, let's just stay here on B for a second. This is, you guys had put different days, I know this is part of the issue here, and did listen to what you said, there has been some changes in the days, not exactly, you had asked for all short form application for 40 days, and then you had asked it where 5,000 or more for 90 days. In meeting with the staff, and I will let them address this, the recommendation from the folks here is, The short form is 90 calendar days before. The second, which is 1,000 to for the large gathering, would be 120 days. So what they did was they decreased the days from 180 and increased the number of attendees allowed. So,
5-9.
so it would be
1, 2, and 3.
up to 3,000 spectators now, and it would have to be in 120 days in advance instead of 180. And then for the massive gatherings, it was changed from, the number on that also was up from 2,500 to 3,000. And part of that number came through because a lot of the size of the events tend to fall under the 3,000, so it allowed it to be a shorter time period with that. And that was changed from 270 days to 180 days. That being said, there's still a provision in there that allows you to file late with a fee, and that late filing fee for the small gathering, I believe, is 45 days, and for the larger gathering, it's 60 days? 90 days? 90 days.
Nothing on the mass?
Hmm?
Nothing on the mass?
That would fall in the same as the, I don't know where that is, so, do we know where that is on the? I was just putting it in there, we're not up to there, but I just.
255.12 application fees is the late.
It's on the
Okay,
last page.
so it would be then,
Right?
220,
Okay.
255.12 C.
Okay, so a small gathering would be 45 days, you'd have to have it in 45 days before the event.
I'm
No,
paying a late fee.
you could pay the late fee between, the, whatever it was, 60 days or 90 days.
90
At
days to the 45.
45 days, you could pay a late fee and still get it in, but after, once you miss that 45-day mark, you will be denied. For the long one, it is 60 days, so you have between, what was it, 120 days? Between 120 days, you have 60 days grace period to get that in with the late fee. And then you have, with the mass gathering, you have 90 days before the event. If you do not have it in, and that's a gathering of over 3,000 people, if you don't know 3 months in advance that you're having something with you, why, you think that's too short?
Maybe no late fee for the mass gathering? Maybe it's gotta be 6 months and that's it, period? What do you
We've
think?
tried this, and the board was very apprehensive to stick with those dates, so, I mean, this would be and I said this last time, you know, if you're going to do this, then you're going to have to stick to it. So what does the board wanna do? What are you recommending? Cause you guys are really on the front line with
The
this.
mass gathering, and I believe the chief will concur, is when you think of something like the Fold Festival, when we had those here, we started almost a year in
Right.
advance on the planning for that, and they're submitting things because there's a lot of work to get done. And it takes up a lot of time, and unfortunately, if alls I had to deal with was special events, you know, I'd be happy, you know, getting it, you know, a few weeks ahead of time. But with all the other things we have to do, and I have to try and carve out time to address these and go back and forth with people to make sure that, you know, their public safety plans are done correctly, you know, I confer with the chief and his people and all, it all eats up time.
But we'll give examples of over 3,000. So over
Yeah.
3,000, you have, say, like the Polish festival, you have the,
Live on 25.
country fair and all of that. So, I mean, that would give you, the way this is working, it would give you 3 months to come up with the safety plan.
I think what, Craig and I, when you say mass gathering, right away, we're into the mass gathering event.
What we're doing for mass gathering right here is over 3,000. What we could do is make a large event, we could go up on the large event to 4,000, but what they're finding from the gatherings, the difference between the 3,000 and the over 3,000 are very different events.
The events that we hold every year, like Alive on 25.
Become
and-
easier with time.
Right, and the
Right.
country fair and Polish fair, you know, after a while, they know what we're looking for. We
Routine.
know, based on previous, events, you know, how things are gonna work, and we get it ironed out rather quickly.
Right.
And if there's a problem, we can get it addressed quickly. When somebody comes in new, you know, with something, and then again, I used like the Fold Festival, you know, which was a great thing, but that took a lot of time and planning.
But you
And a
can't-
lot of field work on our part, the
Right.
chief's part with his people, in order to see that everything was addressed that needed to be addressed.
And I'm gonna go back to you, Bob, on this, because you can't make a code for, you know, it's, the code has gotta be the code, right? So you
I
can't say
understand
for
that, yeah.
events we're familiar with versus something we're not familiar with. So you have to have something in place that there's a comfort level, whether it's something that's happened before, or it's a new event of that size, that you're going to have to be able to address it. So, right now, for the mass gathering, which is above 3,000, would be that they would have to have the event in 90 days, I mean, they're supposed to have it, they'll be paying a late fee, but the minimum is 3 months prior to the event. And if
So
you,
Maybe you can have another category that says anything over 5,000, it's gotta be 180 days out.
No, it does, but to be denied, it's
Yeah, but I'm saying, not giving that late
Not
fee
even giving them the
over
90
5,000
days.
people, right.
Don't they have to have a special Suffolk County gathering permit for 5,000? Cause I
Over.
don't even see that written in here, and it
It's over
should be.
10,000, isn't it?
no,
Five.
It's over
but that's part of the application, but the question,
No, it's not.
We didn't go over
No.
Yeah, we're not up to that yet. But
Maybe-
the
maybe-
the question becomes, I mean, do you want to have, if,
You need more time than 3 months if it's a large event.
okay, so the question is, for the mass gathering, do you want to change the size of the large gathering to up to 5,000? Is that,
Yeah, I think you could just
But
put a
if-
line here on number 3 to say that anything over 5,000, 5,000 or more will not be,
but
there's
that's,
no late fee.
but if you think about 5,000 or more, that's your Live on 25, that's your country fair, that's your Polish fair, that's all of those things that you're going, that you're asking for 6 months in advance.
And there's no problem for those people to do that.
Because they've got it down to a science.
You know, anybody that's
If
gonna
they're-
do an event of that size,
Right.
they know what they're doing, they're gonna follow the permit. Just,
So,
you know,
so we're saying a mass gathering, so any event over 3,000 people, if they don't put their application in 6 months before, they're automatically denied.
think
I'm
you
being
said
very
5,000.
clear on what we're saying.
You say
Yeah, I was
5,000?
saying add a line and say that any events 5,000, right in,
But I'm saying
right in
five,
number 3.
there are mass gathering, most of our mass gatherings
Right,
are
are.
5,000 plus already. Right?
Right.
Right, so name an event that's a mass gathering over 3,000 here that doesn't hit that 5,000 level. I can't think of any. I can't, Polish, it's not, Polish fair, Alive on 25, country fair, you know, any of these things, they're already over 5,000, so they would fall into that category. I just wanna be very clear on that.
I think you can
5,000.
keep,
I don't even know how you account how many people are showing up for those events
No, but
during
you
the
know, the other
day.
thing,
Alive on 5
yeah.
counts the people. Alive on 25 counts the people.
And how many did you count throughout the whole day? I mean, from 5 o'clock
4 hours.
until 9 o'clock at night?
We probably had about 5,000 people down there. Fireworks night, we probably had about 5,000 people down there.
So,
So then, I
I'm
think,
just saying,
listen,
adding a line.
we could put something in here if, can we put something in here if it's a new application or not a previous, we have not previously issued an application?
I don't think you can treat that
That sounds
differently.
Okay.
And this is only giving you the ability to deny it. If it's an event where you feel you've got problems with granting
No
it,
late
you
fee.
still have that option to deny it.
Right.
So, do you wanna leave the 90 days in there, are you okay with that?
This is just a blanket rule that says at that certain date, it will not be considered,
and keep
no
in
matter what you
mind-
do.
Yeah, the other thing I think we need to keep in mind here is that all the events you're talking about are events held on public property. And I think that's key here. You know, these are events, and I mean, Tanger sees, God knows how many thousands of people a day. You know, that doesn't elicit Suffolk County special, event
gathering,
anything.
right.
So the events you're talking about, and this was kind of what we found when scrubbing through this, was they were combining town events, public events, with private events. And that's where the issue was. If you guys wanna do something separate for town events, I think you should.
But I'm gonna just backtrack on that, and I don't wanna say where it was, but we do know that there was a large gathering, there was a large event at Tanger there, and I'm gonna say, was that any less work than on a public street? You had fireworks, you
Yeah,
had
we
gathering,
fireworks,
you had
just the
food,
amount of
you had
time
rock
that-
walls,
the
you
amount
had,
of time that it takes to go
You had
and
alcohol.
inspect everything.
did it change the amount of time it took for you to complete the whole application?
Yeah, I mean, it was still involved, contacting the Department of Labor to make sure that they were happy with the certificates for the bleachers, the zip line, you know, the stage and all, of that, you know.
So I don't
adds
think it
more to
requires any less time for the staff in town to evaluate the event, whether it's on a public street or in a private area. That's my,
You have the police presence that you have at Alive and 25 at the Tanger event, you also have it.
well, they provided private security there, so that had to be evaluated also. So, you know, that took time also. And then there was also an incident where they had to provide more police presence because there was things going on in the community at that time also. So it wasn't any less intense than for the other events.
We have similar manpower, yeah.
I think that the fee too of $2,500 and the fees that we have, besides the late fee, should be that everything is submitted and correct in the application, and if it's not, then you'll be charged an additional, you know, $150 per hour of time for our staff to review or make subsequent phone calls to follow up on these applications. Because if everything's there on the first application, $2,500, and you just make your phone calls once to, you know, whoever you're checking with for the health department to make sure that their food off-site catering permits are there, that the, you know, tents are in, or whatever.
Well, we're not, you know, Jody, to that point, and I know, so, you know, we are asking that the town does a required field application just to avoid all that, to take the burden off the people that have to sit and go through these, right? If you gotta submit a site plan map, there's a little click like you do on other places, right? Required field, you send your map, if you didn't, you can't complete the application until you have everything that is in the application submitted. If you do that, it will really take the pressure off the staff that has to go through these applications.
But the staff still then has to verify.
They have to
That's,
yeah, but it's,
and that's
but
where the,
let
that's
me
where
ask
the
the
stuff
staff,
comes in.
how, let me ask you this, okay, cause we know,
Right.
like, and I'll give you examples, SLA does it. You file a permit in the planning department in Manhattan, you wanna build a skyscraper, it's all required field, you're building in a year. If it was required field, how much would that help you? And have you dealt with the required field applications, cause everybody's dealing with it now.
It's a required field.
No, we still have a paper application, we don't have that
Do it
technology at
online.
this
No,
point yet.
you do it online.
But
it's a
Bob, we
submit-
don't have the system in place to do that at this time, so
Well,
it's kind of a
We're a
moot point.
growing town, I mean, we should look into what that would cost to do.
But at this point, we don't have it, so we need to deal with being able to submit applications in the here and now, right? So that's what we're trying to do right now. So let's backtrack a little bit right now, and let's get the dates correct on this, okay? So, I'm actually a little inclined to change the large gathering to 4,000, and
I
then
agree.
leave the 90 days as the cutoff to be denied if it's a mass gathering.
I agree.
Okay, is everybody, would that be okay with everybody?
I think that's smart.
I just think that a lot more time is involved in these mass gatherings, and I also think that on, the special event checklist where it says special event massive gathering, we're gonna cross off applications again, because it's one application. For an event of 3,000 to 5,000 people, and we're gonna change that to 4,000. And then shall be filed at least 180 calendar days prior to commencement day of special event. And I think that under here, it should say, check the page that refers to when an application can be denied.
Well, this is the code.
No, this is the actual application itself. So when people are going through here
Oh,
and
we're
they're
not up to
reading
the
this.
application yet.
we're not
No,
going
we're not up
over
to the
that yet.
application
Okay.
yet. No, we're not up to
But-
the application yet. Let's just,
Yeah,
let's
no,
wait on that.
I know, but why not? Why don't we do it at the same time?
Because
so
Jody,
that-
we've been through this a bunch of times, and until you then you end up going back and forth. Let's just get this, because everything hinges on something else. Let's get the code done, and then we can go on to the application, because the application is a reflection of the code.
I'll
So
just
are we
amend
making
it
that
as I go
change in
along.
I have
number 3?
one question, so
Yeah.
are we changing 255.9 to state that it's 100 to 1,000, and 1,001 to 4,000, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
And then,
And then are we
3,
gonna just make
401 to-
4,001 or more, get rid of the?
Yeah, we
Right.
take out the 5,000.
Yes.
Okay, so the
Okay.
3,000 is now
Okay,
4,000.
Okay, just,
Right.
that
Okay.
was what I wanted to make sure.
Yes.
It didn't make sense to say 4,001 to 5,000 or more, it just didn't make sense,
And-
okay.
And where is that, where are we making this change?
That's page 5
259,
Okay.
on my
So
draft.
this is-
255.9,
Okay,
page
and-
4.
and What
So
D
the word
three?
applications coming out in all subsections, 1, 2, and 3.
Right, got that.
3,000,
This will
which
be
is gonna be an
4,000
addition, is now gonna become
one more.
4,000.
Yes.
Right. is
4,000
what-
one.
So
that's
four,
the one.
so it becomes now four.
Oh, number, so you, number two goes to four.
Correct, that's gonna go to 4,000. So
And it will
instead of
also lower the
3,000, it's gonna be
days.
4,000.
Okay,
And this
And
is-
on 3,
Four more.
3,001's gonna become 4,001.
okay.
And I'm gonna
And
take
then
out the
this is
words
4,000.
additionally to
Oh, yeah,
5,000, just make it 4,001 or more.
And Bob, on yours, it's
Down
also
here.
page 5,
So
and it's
anything
1, 2, and
over
3 at the top of the
4,000.
page.
And this is
Okay.
This is 4,001.
Wait, so this one is.
So this is
4,000.
4,000.
Yes, yes.
Right,
So I don't wanna change this, just
One,
that-
one more, okay.
Right, okay.
All right,
Got it.
so we're good on that.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on to C. Okay, this is information and material to be submitted with a complete special event short form application. Okay, so the difference between, there's, I just wanna, some background before we go over, there's C is for the short form, and D is for the long, so this should be this should be special event, this shouldn't be long form application. Information and materials to be submitted, with complete special for a large and massive gathering, correct?
Yes.
This is where I was getting, why, this is why I
got
think this should all be one.
I was asked to do this yesterday.
Okay.
And I really didn't have a chance to figure out what application form we actually use, so.
So, and this is,
Whatever we're using, I'll coordinate it to
And
reflect that. but-
Craig, I will go back to you on this one, okay? Do you collect different information for a long and does the size of the gathering matter to you when you evaluate it? In the sense that do you need, you may need some less information, but do you, check to see if the information is needed or not?
Yeah, I mean, the larger the gathering is, usually it's more involved. And there are certain provisions in the state fire code and all that, you know, over a certain number of people, such as the crowd control managers. Okay, once you get up to 1,001 people, now you need 4 crowd control managers. And you need a crowd control manager for every additional 250 people. So I need to know that number, again, the number of events that are going on, you know, so we get a feel for what's going on, what to expect when I go and I evaluate their public safety plan. I need to know, again, what's going on, what they're going to have there. Does the public safety plan, in fact, reflect what the application says they're doing and how they need to address all these things?
So it would just become more detailed, right?
It
So if
does,
you have a
it does
gathering with 1,000 people, you're still looking how they get in, how they get out, if they meet
right.
safety codes and everything else. But the requirements on the applicant are less because it's a less intensive an event. The more intensive the event with people, the more that they need to be
Detail,
up
more I need to know.
detail, but it's still the same information that they need to provide to you in the sense that it's the basic of the information, how you're getting in and out, but if the larger it is, it becomes more detailed, but the
More
scope
problematic,
increases, but it's the
yes.
same information, it's just the scoping increases. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, I would say.
So this is where I came back to with in C and D, why are they not the same? And then some would just be not applicable,
Well,
right? And that's where I find this confusing for the long and the short form. So the information material will be submitted with a complete special event application. Such application shall include the following written material. And then we have all of that. You know, and we could put if applicable. Could we do that, Bob, and then just have one set for all events?
That's why I think it's just easier on the application to say, like, if it's a small gathering, you have to do 1 through 4. If it's a large
well-
gathering, you have to do 5 through 7. If it's a, 1 through 7.
We
If
tried,
it's a,
we tried to do that, but Bob wanted it all written in the code, exactly what you had to, because what we were thinking was just eliminate all of this and say you have to submit a complete application.
Right, but I don't see anywhere.
Could we just simply say that?
And-
Well, if you wanna
and-
do that,
Okay.
we'll make the application 2 sentences and we'll be done with this next
Okay.
year. Cause then it's not in the code anymore, so staff can do whatever
No,
they
so
want at that point.
but that's why I agree
That's
with
the
you,
reason
Bob.
why it should be in there.
Right,
I
so,
think.
and I agree with you, but
Yeah.
my question is, do we need it to have to be long and short, or could we just make DC and then include all of that?
Can't you just say in addition to?
You know what I'm saying?
again,
I know you haven't had a-
I don't have a problem with what you're talking about doing, either combining the sections or saying C is what you need as the necessary information for the short or small gathering, and then D is the additional information that would be required. In addition to the information set forth in subsection
But
C,
there's no difference, right?
this is the information.
Is there a difference?
But there's no
That's my
difference,
question.
but that's
I
the
don't know.
that's what these guys are
I
doing
don't
the
do this.
application, there's no difference in the information you have to provide for a short application and a long application.
just
It's
additional.
it's the scope of each
That's correct.
thing you're submitting, that's kind of what I'm saying, so everything is the same?
But that's not what our
Well,
code
C and D
currently
mirror
says,
each
so
other,
why,
but D
why
is
do we
more
have a
intricate.
difference currently in the
So
code
just take out C.
for a large and a small?
Well, for a large, anything over 5,000, you're gonna need the county assembly permit. So I don't see that anywhere in the code or in the application or anywhere.
The code says that you must
Where?
receive any and all other permits that are necessary.
I know, but that's really not telling the people what they need to do. It creates a question, saying, what other permits do I need?
I think it basically says that this is what we're granting you, but if you need any other permits, you have to get them. That's
Yeah.
what the code says.
I think that it should be clear
we
that
try to-
any
we
event
try to
over.
Overwrite
No,
this.
Yeah, no,
I know,
I'm
no,
gonna
I'm
tell
just-
you why that's a good, why we need to answer the question, because if somebody submits an application for 5,000 people, right, they go, well, you need other permits.
Right.
I mean, it's unfair to the department that has to take this application and, for that department to be responsible for telling them what kind of permits they need.
Exactly, it should be in here.
It should just be in there. If it's over 5,000, whatever permits that triggers should be in the code, so that you don't want your office trying to figure out what permits they need, correct?
Is the town responsible for holding the Suffolk County permits?
Well, we're not
No,
gonna
we're
give
not
them a
required.
permit
No,
if
you're
they're
not
not
gonna
getting
hold
the
it.
Suffolk County
But
permit.
that's where the difference comes
No,
in, right?
but is it necessary that we have that on file?
Yeah.
Is it, Bob?
Bob said.
Is it our responsibility to make sure they have the mass gathering permit for over 5,000, or is it the applicant's responsibility to meet county code, because we don't enforce it, correct?
The police department.
We are not enforcing the county's code as far as I know.
And do we?
It needs to be in here.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
But my question is is it something that we enforce, or is it the
We'll be
applicant's
here.
responsibility?
No doubt.
Who would enforce a mass gathering code if they didn't have a permit?
It'll be the county.
Right, so it wouldn't be us enforcing it.
We know from experience that if the county permit is not issued,
They're gonna,
that's
Right.
not going forward.
Yeah, so that's why
But
we should have the
who makes
county
the
permit
county not,
first before
but,
we waste our
but
time and even
who says to the,
reviewing this.
who then enforces that? Us or the county?
If it's more than 5,000, they
Right.
have to get a county permit. So
Just
if they
don't
don't
tell
have the
them.
county permit
What's
and they're not
5,000
getting the
people
county
is
permit,
nothing.
then why are we even taking an application and reviewing it?
Because you're thinking about Main Street, I'm thinking about on a 200-acre farm.
I don't
they
really
put
don't
it,
know who would
that's
come
what
down
we
to
should require.
enforcing it. Let's say that they were denied and then the
So
event
why don't we
went
just put in
on.
here
I mean,
your
if the event went on, who would
We-
you be the
I
one
would
that
say
would
we
have-
would be showing
you'd
up
be
and shutting it
Probably,
down.
yeah.
All right, so then, so,
But
Sometimes they
that's
tell
not
us
really the
it's
question.
5 days.
No.
I don't think, I think we're going off track here.
all right, so.
The train's left the track.
So
Yeah.
as part of, I think that can be in the application, that if you're over 5,000, as a note that you're required, because we're not enforcing, are we denying the event if they don't have that county permit? That's my
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Are we or aren't
It
we?
happened with the air show.
But I'm asking, if,
Historically?
no, as for, in protection of the town, right? And if that,
I can't remember a specific instance where the county said, we're not giving you mass gathering permit.
No, but if somebody
And the
hold-
town of Riverhead went ahead and approved the permit. I'm not sure I understand the question.
all right, so,
Air show.
so then,
We got
so then,
sued on.
Air show was approved.
It was a field day.
No, it was field
The
day.
field day at
That was
Epcot.
field day.
That, but you know
But
what?
we didn't
It's-
approve that either.
how about we
just
have in here, you're
historically.
required to have all other permits, including,
there already.
all right, and why don't we just put in a note in there, including, any event over 5,000, you'll need a mass gathering permit
From the county.
from the county.
Yeah, but, see, I don't like this. And the reason why I don't like it is because if we're requiring them to get the application in 6 months in advance, then what happens if it's a week before the event? They've done all their advertising, there's 5,000 people coming here, and they come up and say, we don't have the Suffolk County gathering and assemblage permit. Then we go, okay, cancel the event, but how do we stop all these people from coming to our town, and how do we still navigate traffic even knowing that the event is canceled? I mean, I think that the Suffolk County gathering permit needs to be in here, that we need that, before any advertising is done or anything like that, because we can't wait until the last day.
How quickly do they, how far in
Yeah,
advance
that's
do
a
they
county-
issue that? They only issue it,
That's a county
It's a long
conversation,
time.
for
Yeah.
sure.
6 months, I think, or 9
Right.
months.
they issue it that
Yeah.
far in
Need to know
advance?
that.
Because
It's a hard
county
one,
police
yeah.
force has to be out too, assisting us.
So they would have to,
No?
they would have, do they need permission for the town prior to that to
No,
get it?
I've never had to fill one out. We looked at it once a few years ago when we were at 4-H, and it was.
So how about just
really-
no events over 5,000 people?
It was pretty lengthy, and it was onerous, and it was a lot of work, but I just don't remember the details.
We are gonna get events that are over 5,000, like the Fold event and other events of people that are gonna wanna
Oh,
come to
Polish
town.
Fair is over 5,000. Do you pull a
Right.
county event? Do you pull a county permit?
I don't know, but that's why I'm saying, who knows how many people are actually coming?
The
I
county
believe they
wants
do
us-
because once it gets over there, they've gotta have an EMS plan that's
Right.
filed with the county.
Who pulls that permit, though?
I usually tell the people that, listen, you're 5,000, you need to contact Suffolk County
Right.
and Suffolk County EMS about or health
Right.
department about a mass gathering
And then they
permit.
request a
And then
letter
it's-
from me, I don't think.
Right,
we'll get
no,
one
they
from
don't
you.
request one from me, but,
Right.
and then it's up to the county as to whether they're required to have it, because the county has certain criteria, and sometimes the county said, no, you don't need it, when.
That's what happened.
Even when it's over
I've thought-
5,000?
That's what
Yes,
happened
and
at
it
the county
depends on the
said we don't need it.
duration, and the number of people and all, and that's the county's.
Polish Fair doesn't have 5,000 at one time.
So
Yeah.
it's the count, sometimes county doesn't require it for a large gathering, sometimes they do.
Well, you could say,
So,
for
I
any
don't know
event
exactly
over
what the
5,000
You must
criteria
apply to the
are.
county you must notify the county of the event.
But can I
Or,
do?
no, you must show
Why?
us I mean.
But yeah, but if the
That's gonna
county says
impact-
you don't
but
need
conversely,
it,
Then
that's
you give
gonna
us the
impact
letter
your
saying you don't
lead
need
time,
it.
If you need to get the other permit first.
but that's
If
the
you
other
need-
thing.
Right, if you need the
Right,
county permit.
right, Bob.
Now the time period that you need to submit,
You
you're,
need it in-
you're gonna probably miss
right.
the deadline for the submission to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
So you're automatically disqualifying those events.
Exactly.
So that's the only problem I have with
That's
that
my
idea.
point.
That if you're gonna say that no application shall be accepted unless there's a county permit issue.
So
Right.
we could put something, if you want something
So
in your code, you could
effectively
say that.
you don't want a 5,000.
But you could
No,
say,
they
you
can
could say,
plan.
if a mass gathering
okay with
event
that.
is required, it must be submitted 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to the event. What about that? Because
No.
it doesn't, we're not contingent on it, but if they don't get it, it gets canceled, right?
No, they've already done the advertising, the people are coming, they
It's
already
not our
bought their tickets.
responsibility.
With the Fold event, they did, and we, like Craig is saying, with the Fold event, which I was here for, we had several work sessions, several meetings, years in advance of the Fold event being planned. And there's no reason why they can't get a county permit before they file 90,
But-
or 6 months before the
So,
event.
Jody, I'm just asking what you're trying to accomplish, cause I know the business advisory, that you guys are trying to reduce lead time for this, and for putting in an application. So if we're saying do they need to have town approval before they get a county event, application? I
No.
don't know. So my
Honest-
question to you is, if somebody puts an application in, they put it in the 180 days before the event, we approve it at day 120, but we don't, the county is still hung up and decides it's not gonna, either they don't need it, or they're not gonna issue it till 30 days before. So then you're saying we can't approve that event till they get that permit, and if
Yep.
if they now miss the 90 days,
Definitely.
that their event will be denied, are we going to deny that event because they're waiting on the county permit, which they say, oh, I'm gonna get in a day or two, or
No,
whatever?
I'm saying that they submit the county permit or a letter saying that the county doesn't need a permit when they submit the
No,
application.
no, but if they do need the county permit, right? So they put an application to us a day
They don't put the application in unless the county permit's attached to it, or a letter saying they don't need a county
But what if they
permit.
can only get the county permit 30 days
Then
or
they have to
60
pay the
days
late
out?
fee, cause our code is
But we're
pretty.
denying it.
We're denying it
Right.
90 days out.
Well,
We're denying it
there's a-
90 days out.
There's a couple of things here.
No,
First
I
of
don't
all,
even wanna take the application in, unless they have the county permit or a
we
letter
don't,
saying
we
they
don't, we don't know, number
But we
one.
don't know their lead time at Suffolk County.
Right.
They
That's-
might
I don't
only issue,
care
but
what
then
their
you're
lead
never
time
gonna
is.
have an event
Of
like
more than
Village Town
5,000
Fair,
people,
ever.
good.
Aw.
Not
I mean,
Village Town Fair,
I
but
think,
5,000
you
people.
could,
There's
I mean,
never
I think
5,000
you
people
might
there
be
at one time.
safer letting us
I don't think I've ever
process
seen
the
you at
whole
the Village Fair.
application,
No,
and if they're required, if it's identified and they're required to have the mass gathering permit, they must submit the mass gathering permit 30 days before the event, it'll be canceled. Then the responsibility is on them, because they'll either have to cancel the event if they don't get it, or they can work their butt off to get it, and then they can have it. But I think it shouldn't be more work for the town
Right.
on
right.
an event, and.
Can we check with the county just to see
Yeah.
what their guidelines are?
Please.
And then go by that. And
Okay.
if
Yes.
they do give it ahead of time, before they've even filed the application, well, then there you go. But if they don't and they
They
can.
don't do it in conjunction with us.
No,
Right.
but what Diane is saying, we need to
Right.
know what the time parameters are,
Right.
period. And if they're erratic, we need to know that.
Right.
If they say within 6 months, we need to know that. Then
Right.
we have something to work with, otherwise we're just going to go
Yeah,
around.
Right, we're going
okay.
around in circles.
I
Let me ask a
respect
weird
that,
question.
but what I'm
Why do you-
saying is
why
that
do you-
I don't want anybody advertising any events to come to Riverhead and selling tickets and then 30 days before an event saying, we're canceling the event. Because with the field day, that was a disaster for the town. The town got mud all over its face for canceling this event that everybody was looking to come to. The media was beating us up, everybody was beating the town up. I wasn't here then, but I remember it, and I lived in Long Beach at the time. So I'm saying that I don't want the town canceling an event that's where 5,000 or more people are expected to come 30 days before the event.
Okay, well, let's find out what,
Makes
let's find out the length of the permits, and I'm gonna tell you, you know, you keep bringing up the Fall Festival. Whoever said to do it on Sound Avenue was out of their minds. I've done 6,000 people in the field at that vineyard. You know how many police were there? Okay, one, it was a friend of mine, he was on duty, he stopped by on his break to see how things were going. Sound Avenue, you needed 10 patrol cars, if not more. So whoever decided to put it up on the road was the first mistake. So we need to look at those things while we're doing, you know, large events, period.
It was on the
So,
property, it
look,
wasn't far.
Diane, you will let
We
us
can make
know
a
that?
phone call, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
let's,
so
okay,
much.
so let's,
Phone call.
let's just set aside the mass gathering permit and stick with our code for now. We'll find out, we'll get the details and find out if it needs to be, inserted somewhere.
It might
Before
not
we
be
go
an
on,
easy
Yes.
answer.
I have a
It
question.
might be, yes.
On C, the
on
information
C.
and material to be submitted, can't we do something like we do, for the fire marshals, for our permits? That it's to be on forms and application as, approved by, in this case, I guess, the town clerk's office or by the town board, instead of listing everything out, in which case we just have an approved application?
You can.
And I don't know, I mean, is
I
that
mean, you
easier, is
can.
that better, or is that?
Can
I'm
your
just thinking-
application be part of the code, so that you can just, all information needs to be completed and submit, that's just my,
Because you see, with
I
the
think
fire
we're making it
marshal's
more
office-
complicated again than
Okay.
less complicated.
I was gonna say-
It seems like every time we
It
wanna
seems
try,
we are.
we wanna
That's
try
our
and streamline,
pattern. I know.
we tend to do the
okay,
opposite.
so
Our
then,
applications basically remain the same, but when there's changes in the code and things like that, we just simply update our application. And the code just simply says that the application has to be made to the fire marshal's office on forms approved by them. For the
So- so for
information.
which
So
ones is
instead
this
of
here?
having C and D
Both C and D,
here,
that's what she
you know,
proposed.
enumerating everything that needs to be on the application, I'm
Both
just
C and D.
thinking, would it be easier just to shorten it and just say that, you know, for a special, the information and material required to be submitted for a special event application shall be as, you know, as the approved form by town board or by the, you know, town clerk's office, and then we can just simply amend it as we need to, as time goes on, as opposed to having to constantly amend the code.
Yeah,
Right,
but that's
but
the
I'm just gonna say,
time-consuming part.
Bob's the attorney, and he is not comfortable.
Okay.
You
That's-
can do,
I just
you
wanted
can
to bring
do
it up.
that,
No,
I mean,
I
but,
like it.
but by having it specified, you now have codified the conditions,
Yes.
items that you are seeking an applicant to submit.
That's what I wanna
Whereas if
do.
you don't do it, it's a policy issue, I can change the form tomorrow to make it two sentences, and
Yeah.
that's the approved application. Is
Okay.
that what you want?
So
Yeah,
then
there
my,
was a
my
question,
question
that's all.
goes,
I know.
my question, for short and long form, I think the information and material to be submitted is the same. And let's just go, we'll just take the application that we have now, if we're comfortable with it when we're done, and just boom, 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 every one of those items.
So,
Does
Laura,
that,
what you're proposing is kind of like, just get rid of C and just, because D is kind of the first,
yeah,
the first 10 items are exactly the same to D. So the question you asked earlier is what's different?
I'm okay with that.
becomes
do that?
D,
That makes
is
sense.
11 to
Okay,
20.
all right, so we're all
Give it a
okay
C
with
and
that?
make- And make
Okay.
the,
Well, that's what I was saying before, like,
So-
if it's
So
a
all
special
Cs
The
event,
way we wrote the recommendations, we
short
had,
application,
the
you
same
comply
code.
with 1 through 9.
Right.
If it's a long form, you comply with 1 through 20. If it's a mass, it's 1 through 30. So that's what I was trying to say before on the application, like, if it's short, it's 1 through 9. If it's long, it's 1 through 20. If it's mass, it's 1 through 30.
that's
And
kind of how we
then-
wrote the thing. So what we did here, when you looked at the application that we kind of advised, we went C and we just went first item, we made that the application. Second item, made that part of the application. Third item, just so it followed the exact code. And when it got to D, well, the first 10 items were exactly the same, so we just added 11 through 20.
Yeah,
That's how
the
we
only-
made the
that makes
application.
sense.
There's only, let's just go through some of the stuff then. When we have D, I think we included, like 1, 2, and 3, I think, Bob, you had incorporated what they had put there for 1, 2, and 3, correct?
But the only,
Yes.
Okay,
the only
and
thing
then
is,
for
with number 3,
4?
where it says a plan and drawing showing the size of the property. On the application, it says detailed map, plan, or sketch drawn to scale. So do we want it drawn to scale? Cause that's what it says on the application, but it doesn't say that in the code.
It should be to scale so that, because otherwise I get pieces of paper and nothing is to scale.
Okay.
And
Okay,
it's
so
hard
then
to
it needs to be in the
determine
code.
what is where in its relationship to other things that
Okay,
are there.
so then 3 needs to read a plan and drawing showing a plan and drawing to scale, showing the size of the property, the zoning district in which it's located, blah, 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 blah.
Do we need to know the zoning district? Because I know you guys had crossed that out. So, but for the town, do we need to know the zoning district? Do we use that?
I think so. I think if it's right smack like Martha Clara in the middle of a residential district,
Or
you have to give
agriculture, or-
notification
yeah.
to the residential property owners that it's coming.
Okay, so then the other issue still that I have in 3, which was an addition, which I don't agree with, is that the all final paperwork
If
must,
it's in a residential district, to notify the property owners of posts.
on 3, on the business advisory,
Oh, okay, business
page?
advisory.
on page 7,
7, okay.
they've inserted, that all final paperwork must be submitted within 21 days prior to the commencement date of the special event, or the event may be subject to cancellation. I think this should be removed. I think it goes along with our application filing dates. Because this is basically saying all of their paperwork
Oh.
can be, only has to be in 3 weeks before the event. I think
I don't think I put that change.
I think, Craig, you'll pull out whatever hair you have left
Vent
there.
the insurance.
Yeah, I don't think I put that in.
Insurance,
Yeah, so these,
crowd control certificates.
No, please.
You know what, I think, I think, we need to go back and look at that, because the intent of that was, for insurance, crowd control certificates, workman's comp.
Vendors lists.
But all of that stuff we're removing. We're for the, not for the crowd control and stuff, but as far as Suffolk County Health Department
Well, that's- yeah.
stuff, we're removing a lot of the.
Insurance, you need it.
Insurance, if you have, the insurance has to be given 30 days prior to the event, the insurance certificate, but we've talked about this, if somebody has year-long insurance, that will be accepted, if it doesn't, so that you don't get charged the late fee, but then you have to provide it at the date that expires when you renew it before the event. So, let's just say you give something 6 months in advance, right? And your insurance expires, your event is in 6 months, your yearly insurance for events expires in 5 months. You can give in the certificate that will cover it, but on that expiration date, if you don't come in and bring to the town the new certificate, you will be charged a late fee, and if it's within 30 days of the event, your event will be canceled. The onus will be on the person having the event.
I don't like the 30-day cancellation. They're gonna come anyway, or they're gonna be mad. And they're gonna,
No, this is for the insurance, for the insurance for the event. So what the problem was, is people were having, I'm an event company, I have insurance, I buy my insurance for the entire year. I'm filling out for my event 6 months out, my insurance expires in March, my event is in May. So what was happening is, because the way the code is written, the clerks were like, we can't accept your insurance. And then the person having the event was like, well, this is my yearly insurance, I don't have anything to provide you till I renew it. So what we're saying is, we will accept your yearly insurance for events, but you must provide the up-to-date certificate on the day the one you've given us has expired. to stay in good.
What if you just had to do it 30 days prior? Does it just
Because
eliminates that whole?
it is, for these guys, people have been on the phone, you know, chasing people down, it's been a nightmare.
Okay.
So that's the reason for
Side
that.
I don't know.
But this is where, you know, and I noticed, this is where increased late fees, you know? This, you know, you guys, it's nice of you to do all this, but there's gotta be a penalty to not, you know, most people who do this often, okay, they know what they're doing. The fact that you know, you're not here to babysit people who come in new and don't know what the hell they're doing. And in order for them to pay, the only thing that's gonna make them pay attention is penalties, the fees. So I'd like you to really look at that and think about that.
There is a $50 late fee charge for late submission of insurance. We're still babysitting it, obviously, 'cause I gotta.
So if you don't have your
No.
insurance, if you don't have your insurance.
They do pay the $50.
Right, they don't seem to have a problem
No.
paying the $50. That's the cost of doing business.
And I
Yeah,
don't
but
think,
you-
I don't
but
think the
that's the
insurance has
problem.
been, and since we've implemented
Update.
that, it's
been
been
better.
much better, because before we had that $50 fee in there, it was a nightmare. So even the $50 seems to be working, so.
But I
So
would
let
like
me
to get, go ahead,
Understand,
Dean.
you don't have to file it, you can just choose to pay the $50 fee and.
And it has to be in 30 days before the event.
Right.
Yes.
To me, that's the same as what I was saying, raise the
Yes.
application price and eliminate the fee, or.
Right, so
however you
that,
get
so
there.
there is a fail-safe in there.
Because I had a couple other event people, like Mike from Darkside, he wasn't able to get insurance that far out. It's a Halloween type thing, and he just couldn't get insurance, he was really struggling with it.
There's a fail-safe in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get, just so, you know, and I think you guys are aware of this, you cannot get insurance. If I try to insure an event here from 6 months ago, and somebody falls outside, you know, a month after I file for the insurance for an event that's gonna happen 6 months later, they can sue. The insurance companies are not
No, you can
stupid.
get insurance for one day. You can get event insurance
No,
for
no,
one
yeah.
day, for the day of your event, and it only lasts for the 24 hour for the day
But
of your event.
Okay, I wanna just backtrack and ask you guys. So when you so it was a nightmare before you put the $50 fee on, right? So what did that reduce it? And if you put a $100 fee, would it reduce, how do you get closer to zero?
But what is it, what we're trying to accomplish is to have somebody submit their insurance when they submit their application, right? That's what we want. We don't wanna have to go back and look at it and follow it up, find out when it is, do you
Gotcha.
have it, do
Okay.
you don't have it? We want you to submit it when you submit your application. We understand that there's some people that have year-round event insurance that expires before their event happens. Fine. Prior to this, we would say with the code, sorry, you don't have insurance for that day of the event, your application is incomplete and unacceptable. So that was something that we needed to correct. So now we say, you can submit your year-long your year-round insurance, but when it expires, you need to give us the new application. And if it's 30 days before the event, you need to have that the insurance in, or your event is canceled. We're not chasing people 24 hours, 48 hours before the event. Bob, how many times did Laura Calamita, a day, 24 hours before event, she was sitting here trying to get insurance from people, trying to find somebody on the phone, who was the contact person, being shoved around from person to person.
All
So,
the time.
you know, it's not our responsibility.
So you're not saying new application, you're saying new proof of insurance?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, you need to give us the updated insurance form, that's it.
Okay, let's keep going.
That, okay.
Let's keep going.
All right,
Keep
so
going.
that's,
Keep
those are those.
We're gonna need a 2:55 just for this meeting.
Gonna
I
need
know.
2 more days.
And then
What
this,
time is dinner?
this goes back on all of
Whatever
these
time
where
we're
you,
having it
where you
delivered.
have the 21-day thing, that to remove that.
Oop, where are we? What
The
page?
other thing is, on a lot of these, and I know, Bob, you still have this, you still have, the approvals by the town of Riverhead and Suffolk County Department of Health Services. Why do we need their Suffolk County Department of Health Services? So if somebody's having food vendors there, I know it has to be on the site plan drawing for Craig to look at, but why do we need to know who their caterers are, who their vendors are, just in their project description? You know, we're gonna have 15 vendors, and then there should be an affidavit that says, we are going to obtain the necessary, certificates, and then it's up to Suffolk County to then police that, which is what they do, because we don't police food vendors. We only police them from the fire marshal standpoint, which,
And that's something that I watch, being on the backside of it, I watch you guys chase it all the time, and it seems unnecessary to me. It's like you're not the health department, same thing with the SLA, you're not New York State. So I get that you're trying to do a good job and be diligent to keep people safe, but it seems like an unnecessary step for a town
Well,
to have to go through.
The liquor,
I
I'm
don't
not,
think that's
I'll
what it's
defer
saying.
to, I'll defer that to
Okay,
you.
well, yeah, you
Yes,
guys-
that's a
But when
different.
it's a town, when it's a town event, this is where there's a bit of overlap, right? If I'm the town, okay, I would be very concerned about, you know, how the health department permits are being handled. Obviously, you can't write a fine. you
Well, the
know.
town's not running any events per se. It's usually run by somebody else in like something's
Okay.
read by the bid, or it's run by somebody else. It's not, you know, the town isn't, you know, Townscape, well, the bonfire. Is that Townscape, that's us, right? The- Yeah.
Bonfires,
Lions Club do the parade.
parade,
Parade,
but
right.
not the bonfire.
Yeah, so, okay, so go
But
ahead.
your point about the health department permit is totally unnecessary, because who would know, what do? You're not gonna go around taking the temperature of food, which is what they do.
Yeah, I
and-
think that's what Laura.
Well, I'm in full agreement with you.
Okay, so.
You're ahead,
no,
Bob, just leave it.
No, I'm with you, I'm talking more to Bob than I am to you,
Yeah.
because I agree with you.
Yeah,
Oh, Monique. Hi.
But we've had this conversation, Bob, it's not something that we police, it's not something that we have anything, I think the only thing we need to know is that they'll be serving food, right? And that if they're serving food, they should sign an affidavit saying that will be serving food, and that they've gotten their required permits from the health department, and they sign off on that, and
Five
then.
and six aren't saying that we need proof of the permits. Five and six are just saying that we want a plan that will meet the approval of both those agencies. That's what
But
five and six says.
but then how do we know what the approval for Suffolk County is? Are we monitoring that?
No, I
Five
think
and six
that,
aren't saying that. Five and six are just saying that we want a plan that's going to be sufficient for approval by the town of Riverhead and Suffolk County Department of
But how do
Health.
we know it's sufficient for Suffolk County? When we get the plan, the town clerk or your office make sure it's sufficient for Suffolk County?
So you wanna just strike and Suffolk County Department of Health Services?
I think so. I mean, because we're not, but Bob, what I'm saying is, we have it in there, but, so are we making sure that they're sufficient with Suffolk County? No, we're putting it on them,
We
by them
have in the
signing.
past.
I know, but.
Laura chased people to make sure that we had the Suffolk County permits.
But there's no.
But
yeah.
what I'm saying is, but we don't
And that's
police
really-
it.
that's really
We don't
under-
always get it, and it's.
14, I think.
And it's
or-
a lot of work on your end, I
Or
see it.
9.
But what I'm saying, Bob, is if we make, if somebody's a vendor, right? And why aren't, if an applicant is coming in, why don't we just say to the applicant, make them sign an affidavit that if they if they need Suffolk County Health Department permits for food service, they are
will.
required to get, and that prior to the event, all vendors will have their necessary permits. That's all we're just making them responsible for their event, because even if they have somebody there without a permit, right? What do we do? I mean, the police aren't going in and.
But 5 and 6 aren't putting a, 5 and
That's what
6 aren't putting an obligation on us to do anything. It's
No.
just saying we want a plan that says they will get these things. I'm not
Okay,
sure
but
I
I'm
think-
missing something.
I
I'm
think
missing
that
something.
it should just
It's not saying the town's gonna follow up and ensure they got health department approval, just that there's a plan sufficient
I think
to
it should
receive health
say,
department
a
approval.
plan and drawing may be required by Suffolk County Department of Health Services, a copy of your application
take
will
it
be
out.
forwarded to them.
So this is
again-
another
And then we
problem.
send it to the health department knows the day the event's happening, it knows if they're gonna have food vendors, it knows everything based on the application. We send a copy, the clerk does, to Suffolk County, and let Suffolk County deal with it.
But why are we getting involved in it? It's not our responsibility at all. Somebody's coming to us, they're saying they're gonna have an event. We're responsible for okaying the event, the number of people, making sure they're in compliance with the fire marshal, making sure that we have the policing that needs to be in place, and they're gonna tell us that they're gonna serve food, and we say to them, if you're gonna serve food at the event, then you need to get the necessary requirements for Suffolk County Health Department. And that's it, because we're not doing anything with, like, we don't know what food trucks are there, we don't know whether they're in compliance, we don't know whether they're in
And
compliance, we don't test it, we don't do anything.
like,
I know when I
dies
get
of food
there. He
poisoning and they
knows.
were
I
on
know when
town
I get
property,
there.
then we're dragged into a
Well,
lawsuit
usually-
anyway. That's why the health department should know
But-
if someone's
but-
having an event like this.
But you may call the health department and say, okay, on my site
Right.
plan, I have 5 people, now I have 15 people, do you know about this?
Why-
But you're not
why?
checking for them to
First
make
of
sure
all,
they're in
I
compliance.
gotta-
The idea of this was to make
Please
less work
chime
for
in,
Craig and the
because-
staff.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But they're usually, at a lot of these larger events, they're.
The health
they're
department's
usually-
there.
Usually
Right.
there
So they
inspecting.
Right, because that's, they had to apply for the permits.
Right.
And then if the health department comes and sees that they've applied for 6 permits from 6 trucks, and there's 12 trucks there, it would be the health department that is then monitoring that and issuing tickets, correct?
Yes, I
Right.
mean, we're just
I'm
looking at
sorry.
it to see whether they're in compliance basically with the fire code.
That's
and-
exactly
and
what I'm saying. That's
life
exactly.
safety codes.
Right,
as
that's-
opposed to the
that's
health
what I'm saying.
department, Yes.
That's
Doing
what I'm
this
saying.
with a different area, so with tent permits, you don't, you just say, hey, look, if you have tents and they're certain size, go get tent permits. It's a different agency, go get tent permits. It's the same thing
Can I-
you're suggesting, and it makes sense.
Can I just say that with 100% certainty, the Department of Health shows up to every single event that there's going to be food at, whether there's 100 vendors or there's 2. They will be at every single event. They are there policing that situation no matter what. And if they see an event, they also police the web, Suffolk County
Exactly what they
themselves.
do.
So if they see that there's an event listed for a certain date to come in at a certain time at a certain place in their county, they will 100% contact the organizer and say, hey, I see you have this event listed. Who's the organizer? Who's responsible for this? You have to have a DOH permit submitted for organizer. They're really on top of their stuff.
So this
If
is
it's
where I think
advertised, so
that we should have the affidavit in here, that the applicant for the event signed and says that for all food vendors, I have complied and have received that will be participating, have received their Suffolk County Health Department permits.
Yeah,
And
that's the way-
that's, that's
They
what.
don't have that when they apply.
That's,
Doesn't-
they don't
doesn't
need
matter,
it, they
they're
don't need it,
committing,
they don't need
Bob.
it, we don't need to know whether it's,
You
Joe's
just said you have it-
Taco,
You just said an affidavit stating that they have it.
that they will get it. That
Oh,
they,
okay,
all
okay.
food
That's
vendors
different.
will be
Okay.
compliant with Suffolk County Health Department. So we don't need to know whether it's Joe Taco or,
gonna save
Frank's
you
Hot
guys
Dogs.
so much
Making me
That-
hungry.
I agree.
Yeah. So, I.
Unless there's alcohol, because if they're serving alcohol on town
Different.
property,
That's SLA.
and you have to get an off-premise catering permit in order to bring the alcohol outside of your building onto the street, we are responsible if somebody gets hit over the head with a bottle because the person was drunk and they hit, whatever. We're responsible. So when it comes to the alcohol, there has to be something different for that. I agree with you that we should just be saying, okay, you know what, Suffolk County Department of Health Services, I think we should be sending Suffolk County Department of Health Services a copy of the permit application saying that they are gonna have food vendors there.
They do police it, they're
Okay,
rigorous.
but not if they don't know about it. And we had an event this year that got changed from one date to a next, which was the food thing at Tanger. So we told them that they couldn't have it on that date, they could have it on the following weekend, so the health department may not have known about that,
So-
that it got
No, they were
switched or
there.
anything.
So,
No,
we
police-
can put
Jody,
it,
they
we can put it,
police.
we can put in what they sign, that they verify that they will have notified Suffolk County.
Yeah,
So
fine.
the onus should be always on the applicant, not on the town, right?
Right,
So
but-
and if we find out they didn't notify, then there's a fine that's attached to it.
Okay, so what if it's a off-premise catering for alcohol, and it's on town property? And they signed an affidavit saying that they were gonna get the permits for the off-premise catering, but they didn't. And somebody dies on town property and they didn't get the permits. Who's responsible?
So, well, the SLA, the alcohol permits are different, so we're talking just food here. This is just for food.
I don't think so. I think that the
No, alcohol
off-premise
po-
catering, I don't know that they get
Alcohol
that.
is
You know what?
So
Yeah, wait, if you
catering
would-
is
yeah.
a different permit, I'm sorry.
It is.
I'm sorry, Bob. Catering is a different permit. There's a few different permits through the SLA. Please excuse me, I just came back from the dentist, so.
It's okay.
So there's an offsite catering permit is one of them. Caterers or restaurants are really the only places that can get that permit because they're permitted to do hard alcohol. And then there's a one-day beer and cider permit, and then there's something called a marketing permit, which is also only open for beer and wine.
And that's all through SLA.
And that's all through SLA, and they all have the same regulation as far as submitting their permit and what the requirements are for paperwork associated with that application. But the SLA is extremely backed up, like,
I know.
all the time, and they do not, and even if you were to call them and say, hey, I need my permit for Saturday the 15th, they'll tell you, you'll get it on Friday the 14th.
Yep.
So, I think that, that's a valid concern for the town, absolutely. And I think that, the best way to mitigate that would be for the applicant to show proof at some point that they have submitted an application with the SLA. So,
Or,
you know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that,
that's one way.
so with the SLA, you have 15 days prior to the event to apply for that permit. So
No,
I think
okay.
within
I think that's a good
15
idea.
within 15 days, if you just show, cause you can literally go onto the website where you've applied for it, and it'll just show up a screenshot, and you can screenshot that and send it over.
Does that work
Right.
okay with you
That's
guys?
okay with me.
Okay.
Yeah, but, can I just
So
say,
then
we're
we need
trying to
to
make
put
this
that in here
as
somewhere.
least onerous as possible. So if you're signing.
They've agreed to it already.
And I understand, but I'm trying to make it easier, okay? If you've agreed, if you've checked the box, health department permit, you checked it, right? So you're signing an affidavit on the bottom. And if you're responsible for SLA permit, you're checking that box and you're signing an affidavit. You know, that relieves you don't have to go
Well,
around showing
we need
paperwork.
additional insurance, we have a different alcohol policy, we also have, tips training that's required, that doesn't happen in
Well,
other
it's-
places, so.
When you check that box,
Well,
that triggers
I
that you
think
need
that,
that additional
I think
insurance.
that the town has taken it upon itself to be a little bit more, aggressive with our alcohol policies to make sure that kids aren't getting it and teenagers aren't getting it, and I think that we've, you know, the town is not willing to compromise on that as far as, you know,
Yeah,
I
permit
know,
is not
so
gonna
I
keep
think
kids
that
from
that is something that is just gonna have to be part of this. But the 15-day permit and showing that as far as the application goes, I think that's
they've applied
that's
for it.
permissible.
I don't think that that's an onerous situation, but.
It's also actually giving the applicant a heads up that, hey, you know, you have
This
to
has to
file
be
this
done.
application.
So I'm just gonna keep moving on here. So number 10, for the music and things like that, you guys had put a noise ordinance shall be in effect as established by resolution of the town board. Who, a plan for use of music, loudspeakers, horns, that's done through your office?
Yeah, who does that?
At the town clerk's office, as far as music and all of that other stuff? What do you do? That you just note that they're having it, or is there?
Yeah, they were just listed on the application.
Yeah, we don't have any
We
other.
had, when we had the Fold Festival at Martha Clara, I know that the first year was very loud for the residents, so the second year we asked them to turn the speakers in a little bit more, so that they weren't going out towards the residences.
So the,
Recommendations we made might just cover it.
that's what I'm gonna get. So Bob, for the noise ordinance, a noise ordinance shall be in effect as established by residents, so that's our town noise ordinance. Would that cover any music and everything, or do you think we should still have a plan submitted if someone's having 4 bands, 5 bands, you know what I mean? I think we should have some, it should be in the event description.
It's a
So-
decibel reading, though, that in the town code, there's a noise code, all right? And it's above certain decibels, I don't care if you have 1 band, 20 bands. If it's below that decibel, it's below the decibel, you're within the code. And who's gonna know, you gotta train people on how bass and treble, tones travel and
But
wind.
I'm just, but
That's
what I'm
not
trying,
really-
what I'm
that's
trying to
really not
find
the
out
purpose
is,
here.
these are the guys that look at the applications. Right now in the code.
And I'm the one that heard the complaints.
We had a plan for the use of live music, loudspeakers, horns, or other sounds which will be used, if any, in any type of location of speakers and other audio equipment. Is that the information that you guys would like to have? Because what they're suggesting is it's not in there, it's just use the noise ordinance. So would you prefer to be able to know what's planned for the event? Do you want, I mean, I
Well,
think.
if you just say it's reference to the noise ordinance, then.
Everybody's gonna get a ticket.
How do we know
Yeah.
whether?
And that's not gonna cover all the complaints that we're gonna get.
How do we know whether you plan on live music or not?
Well, that's in the event description. But do
we
you
should
need a
know ahead
picture
of
of the
time.
stage, the amount of amps, the amount of
Nope,
watts?
none of that's,
That.
no, none of that's, no, none of that's there.
No,
It's
we
just,
haven't-
it's just, you're gonna
we
have
haven't
2
asked for that.
bands, you know, you're gonna have 2 bands, or you're having a DJ with, you know,
Loudspeakers,
10
horns.
speaker, you know, loudspeakers, or you're having acoustic. It's really more along the lines whether the music's gonna be amplified or not. That's
And-
really
and whether or
the
not
gist
your-
of it.
And whether or not your bandstand is gonna be right next to 10 houses.
But the real net result is it's that noise ordinance.
Yeah, but what are we gonna do if you're in violation of
The
the noise
noise,
ordinance?
yeah, the
If
noise
you're
ordinance is
having-
the noise ordinance.
If you're having a band,
Mhm.
chances are you're gonna be exceeding the noise decibel of 65 dB for a location next to a residential structure. If you're having a band,
So then you're,
So you're already above the noise ordinance. We know
You
that
shut
ahead of
down the
time if
band.
you're having a band.
You shut down the
So
band.
shut down the
We
band.
used to have it all the
Why?
They're
time.
above the
We used to
noise
have neighbors
ordinance.
call the police and the police would come with a decibel meter, okay? And they go like this and they go, Bob, you're fine. And, you know, and we had our own decibel meter. I mean, but if it's above that, the police have the absolute right to say, shut it down.
Why though? Why not just
Because
have
they
the
have the-
people
it's-
put it up front saying the bandstand's gonna be here and the
Yeah, but
speakers are gonna be
that
pointed
doesn't
in away from the
control
residential?
the level of the sound.
You know what,
Right,
Bob?
but that's day
Bob,
of event.
On Fox Trail, right behind Martha Clara, we heard from every single one of those people for 2 weeks leading up to the event and a week after the event. Bob, yes?
well, let me ask you the
But
opposite
as a town board,
question.
right, we would like to know, right, so we get the application for events, and if an event is going to have 6 bands as opposed to 2 bands, I would like to know that. I think that it's significant, first of all, the way it gathers, you know, other things I think the police wanna know, because there's different crowd controls versus, you know, some guy playing an acoustic guitar in the corner, you know, around the place. So it really is just a part and parcel of the description of the event.
Well, I can't
mean,
think of any reason not to tell it unless you didn't want the town to know how many bands there were gonna be,
It's
or how
almost-
loud it
it's-
was gonna be.
It's kind of
I think
immaterial.
How do you
the
know how
town
loud
needs
it's
to
gonna
know
be?
ahead of time.
And I guess the town's
Well,
saying
we
we don't
have a
feel it's
sense.
immaterial, that's.
I think it really comes down to that, because we're talking around circles, and we're gonna be here till 5
Yeah.
o'clock
Yeah.
dinner time today if we keep
What
going
time
like
is
this.
You might be.
But I mean,
Diane and I
I
are
understand
leaving.
what you're saying,
I'm
but
going with you.
the noise ordinance
There's
is
a
the
whole
noise
level
ordinance.
here.
It is the law.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be referenced, but that's only giving us the ability to take action when the noise exceeds the ordinance. What we're asking for here is some detail up front, so that when we're judging the application, we know. That's all.
Okay, but.
I don't understand the
that's
issue.
fine.
I
Yeah.
really, I'm boggling.
I'm gonna
I'm
make
Yeah,
it-
so
boggling.
let's move on, let's move on to,
I'm-
let's
I'm-
move on to the, let's
I
move
think
on
I'm
to the
gonna
next,
leave pretty
well,
soon.
let's move on to the next one.
I'm gonna put a note on that one, and I'll explain to you later.
You
I
can
wanna
explain, but
know- Tim, do you wanna know ahead of
I
time?
don't understand why all the
I
pushback.
Yeah,
wanna
so-
I really don't.
Jody, do
So-
you wanna know? We wanna know,
Yeah,
that's
the-
non-negotiable.
Yeah, the board wants to know.
Great,
our job
has
is to
nothing
protect
to
the
do with the
town.
law.
Well, it's already.
The law is the law.
This is a
The
privilege
code
to
is the
have the
code.
event, it's not a right, so.
I mean,
Okay.
this is just information
So
we're
let's,
asking.
let's
Tell
just,
us why we shouldn't ask for it.
let's just keep
Explain why it
going.
shouldn't be asked for.
All right,
How
where
about
are we
How
now?
about in the reverse?
And-
Why shouldn't we ask for it?
And-
This is a noise ordinance.
Okay,
But
It doesn't
why
matter.
shouldn't we ask for it up front to know?
Cause it's not gonna determine what's gonna
determine?
trigger a complaint.
well, I
That's
think,
not-
I,
that's not the
no,
purpose.
I
That's
think
the
when,
purpose.
when the town, and I don't, let's
I'm
just
sorry,
move on,
I'm
let's
sorry.
let's just
We-
move on.
we all
Okay.
agree.
So,
Yeah.
The
conditions,
board agrees.
conditions of granting permits,
What page is
I think we're in B, where you guys had crossed out the non-refundable administrative fee, for the insurance, page 8 and page 9, so we're in
Okay.
25510, B1. I feel like I'm playing bingo.
I know.
So number
What am I
one, which
missing?
you had crossed out, we are leaving,
Oh, I
we
see.
are looking to leave in there,
Alright.
and that's what we spoke about before for the insurance.
Page 8.
In 25511, was the next change B,
Can I-
which was, in determining, let's see, it shall consider not, you guys change it to may, we're leaving it as it shall consider.
I'm sorry, Laura, can we just back up just for 1 second to
Sure.
B1 under section 25510
Yes.
on page 9?
Yes.
Okay,
They
so
struck it.
the $50 fee for the liability insurance,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way that myself or other event people can produce an active certificate of liability insurance 180 days, 100 days, 90 days sometimes in advance.
But you can get insurance 6 months out for the day of event. What,
You can get insurance 6 months out for the day of event, but
Right.
I'm not paying $8,000 for insurance to submit it with my application.
Then you pay the
that is
$50
not-
fee.
That is not approved yet, that's not, I feel like this is not fair. So,
30 days.
you have 30 days.
I know it's 30 days, but the $50 fee, you guys you wanna keep that in there. I feel like if we give it to you within 30 days, that I shouldn't be, you penalize the $50.
It's just,
I
it's an
think I
added
understand too.
step. it's an added step that the town clerk has to take in order to make sure that, like, your file is not gonna go, okay, we have their insurance certificate on file, the event is in 6 days, we have their annual policy, we know we're covered, we're named as additional insured. The file goes away, they never have to look at it again. But if you don't submit the insurance, then 30 days before the event, they have to have a tickler file where they have to pull it out and then call you and say, where's the insurance certificate? You know, you're
I
at.
think that should just be on the event owner, like, if, as an organizer, I'm organized enough to know that I need to have my insurance in 30 days before.
Okay, but
or
Carol's saying that it's not happening.
Right, you are.
Yeah.
But not
There-
everybody.
The 90 other
So how do
people
we
that I
punish,
have to
how do
deal
we
with
punish
are
the
not.
violators and not the
So,
people that know what they're
exactly.
doing? How
Well,
do we do
because,
that?
because you can't do that. It's
No,
one
how-
rule for all.
How can we do it?
Well,
Not we can't do it.
we're saying that we've been through this
Yeah.
and it's kind of non-negotiable.
Right, and honestly,
This
the
isn't
people that
that
we've
onerous.
approached
It's
with it
$50
didn't
fee.
seem to have a problem paying the
Right.
$50.
Right, you can pay the
I mean,
$50 and get it in.
I understand what you're saying, and that
Right.
might be true for you, but other people seemed okay with it.
So once again, it's the onerous is on the applicant.
It's not that onerous.
Yeah, it's not at all, so. 11, where am I, 11 here? For B, you guys had put, instead of shall, you put may, we believe shall should be left.
Where are we?
On 5511B,
At page 9 and 10.
I'm looking at what they wrote.
Do you like shall?
yes.
It means you're gonna look at every one of these conditions when they may not even apply?
Yep, that's what we do.
100%.
But why not may?
Because you shall consider all of them, you shall consider all of them, whether, you know, that's it. When, whether to, you know, you have to look at all of these, when you're
saying
determining.
Someone would need an environmental impact study?
You have to consider whether they need it or not, sure, you can't ignore that. You're not, you're like, maybe they need it, maybe they don't, no,
So
you
you're
have to
saying-
decide whether they need it or not, you have to take a look at it.
Your office shall, the town clerk's office shall consider everything because you're reviewing the
Yes,
applications.
exactly. You may
Not-
not need everything, but they take it into consideration whether you need it or not.
But somebody reading this code may think that they have to provide all this stuff, right?
Well, the fire marshal's
Maybe
office
it's a
gets
way to
involved
reword
in.
the
It
so
says,
not-
okay, if you wanna reword
Maybe
it then.
there's a way to reword
Yeah.
that, so it kind of achieves both
Okay.
when
Okay.
looking at it,
Yeah.
so that
Can
might,
you do that, Bob?
yeah,
Alright, thanks.
I'm seeing what you're saying, so
Yeah.
I think, cause then it goes on to say, as may be available, but maybe as may be available and applicable, is that what we're kind of thinking? Okay, alright.
Why'd you cross out the whole page, Bob?
Cause it wasn't a change, for my sake, I was just looking at stuff that I didn't make any changes on.
It comes up a lot,
So
Bob.
I could
And-
skip through a page.
And,
not drop
and
down
it's,
on it.
and you also, a recurring event that has been subject to a violation within the past 3 years, not an
You can do it the
unresolved,
backwards
not an
way.
unresolved
I
violation.
gave you everything, but then I'm gonna cull it down once we get to the point where we go to public hearing.
I'm sorry, where are you, Laura? Laura,
On 10B, I'm just looking at your next thing that you had.
10B. We
10B.
were on 11.
We were on 11, you're going back.
No, we're on the
10
same code,
and
but
page
it's got a
11.
lot of numbers to it.
Oh.
Okay, if you turn the page, it's got a lot of numbers
So
to it.
10 is number 1 that they had
So,
question.
so,
All
so
right,
number
Pete.
7, we agree that you verification that there are no outstanding violations, so we got rid of that and just outstanding violations. So that was a good change. But then B, 10B, whether this occurring event has been subject to a violation within the past 3 years. We're gonna look whether they had a violation or not. It doesn't have to be an unresolved violation. Even if it was resolved from a previous event, we'll still consider it. 11,
What is this, on 10, they have comments also.
right.
And I
They
like
have-
it, it says date and time, and ours just says date, so you skipped over that and went right to 10B.
If one, it says end, we don't wanna limit ourselves by that, so date, because time we wanna take in consideration, we don't wanna have to do both, right? So it could just be date for us.
Yeah, but if there's an event happening in the morning from 8 to 12, and then there's another event happening that same day from 2 to 4, you're saying that that's not gonna be taken into consideration? I think it should be, the date and time, to make sure that we have.
That's why we added it.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
Mike
I like
at
it.
Darkside Haunted House is like, hey, you guys are all talking about this, but I'm at night.
Yeah,
Right, but it's, the town has the option then to consider the full date and time, but we're saying the way, we're limiting ourselves here, correct, right? Date and time. I don't think we should limit ourselves by date and time. We limit ourselves by date,
Question on that.
and then the town has the discretion to make the judgment, you don't have to consider both.
It says within a half-mile radius of each other,
Yes,
but what about events, and the one I'm thinking of, the half-mile radius, we had the Polish Fair and the famous food festival both to be on the same weekend. They're not within a half mile of one another, but the chief and I discussed it, and we came to you guys and said, look, we've got manpower issues or personnel issues
Right.
to address, but this is saying that we're only gonna address it, I believe, if
no,
they're
you
within a half
shall,
mile.
it has to be considered then, but you can still deny any application you want.
Okay.
You're allowed to deny any application, because that's the whole thing, but this says, if it's within a half mile, you have to consider both events going on.
Well, I
On the
think,
same day.
I don't like
It
the
needs to
within a
be
half
ta-
mile. It should
Okay,
be
that
any
was
event in the town.
Yeah.
And I think that date and time should be considered.
Well,
So-
that's kinda in subsection 13, where it says possible conflicts with other events and seasonal demands. Now, if you wanted to expand upon that, and that just says which may overtax or cause undue burden on town services for, and it probably should be
you wanna just
not
combine?
for parades and special events, maybe
Okay.
it's.
Can we combine them? They
We
seem
combine
like
the
they
two of
sort
them?
have
Yeah.
the same.
I guess we could.
Yeah, so let's just combine them.
Diane,
And I would
do you
get away
have-
within a half a
But
mile
the reason I
radius.
think it's separate is one is specifically to the half mile, and the other is just a generic catch-all, so I think, actually, no, I'd rather have them separate.
You would rather have
It's
them
a separate, it's a
Why,
separate.
why within a half mile? Why would we only consider the date if it's within a half a mile of another event?
I think when that came up, it was more thinking about like something like, two events on Sound Avenue.
Yeah,
and
for
maybe,
traffic.
You know, and I think the chief had a really good point, way back, when we met with him, and Diane and Carol, you can address this, is to have a blackout calendar. If you know that there's going to be the Polish Fair, that's it for that day, you know.
Well, that's why we want the applications in a timely manner, so we can black them out, because until we have a complete application in, nothing is
Right.
approved, we're not gonna block out dates on maybes.
No,
So when
I
we,
got it.
that's why it's so important that we get the applications in a
I
timely.
understand, but you have a
also-
mechanism for that?
No,
Not really.
no, we're not gonna block
I
out
think
dates
that
for
the blackout
partial
dates
dates.
can be a little bit iffy though, because you're talking about, so you have the Polish Fair, right? And then say, I wanna throw a block party, you're gonna tell me I can't throw a tiny block party? You know, I think that they need to, it's very individualized and they need to be considered on an individual basis.
I do, I agree. I
I
think that,
agree.
I don't like the blackout dates. I think that the town clerk coming to us and say, you have a chapter 255 application, and I wanna forewarn the board that we have this event going on that day, this event going on that day, this event going on that day, and then the town board can make a better decision. But, you know, as far as the Polish Fair is concerned, when we got the Polish Fair in, and at the same day they were planning the food festival at Tanger, we asked the food festival to change the date,
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
and they did.
That doesn't
So then it worked out.
yeah, and I
But-
feel like that's appropriate too.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like that's appropriate, if there's gonna be two huge festivals on the same day within the town, taxing the resources, then yes, I think that it should be an easy thing to say to an organizer, especially, if you're a true event organizer, you're starting to plan your stuff almost, 6, 7, maybe 8 months in advance, and trying to secure your venues and your permits, and then looking to get vendors and everything else in place.
But that's why I
Yeah, but
think,
how do you-
that's why I like your date and time
Yeah.
in here, rather than just date.
Right.
How do you address it, though, if somebody comes in before the Polish Civic Association applies for the Polish Fair, somebody comes in with a 4,000-person function for the same day or the same weekend that the fair has it every year?
You know
So
what
how
my
do you
answer
address
to that is? The Polish festival or the Polish fair has been going on for God knows how long,
Mhm.
and that they should know when their dates are that they're going to put in for it. And that honestly, they
Yeah,
should,
but
Well,
it
that
has
once
nothing
they
to
should
do with
put in-
somebody
Once-
coming in
once-
earlier and putting the date in.
Once again, that's why it's so important that there is a longer lead time for having to put your application in, so that if somebody is planning an event and they're not coming in 45 days before and say, I wanna do this, and somebody's had theirs in for 6 months, and so that's why the lead time is really important, so gives everybody the opportunity to be able to put their event around the schedule of other events
I don't
happening.
like that argument, but I think that,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't think
if I
that
would've-
that's the good
yeah.
argument for that situation.
The Polish Fair would wanna do it early, and especially if they're aware, I mean, I would wanna do.
But
you
that's-
know,
But it
But
doesn't
that's
mean
why
that
we
somebody
have
doesn't beat them by a
rules in
day or a
place.
week by putting their application in, so how do you handle that?
That's
It's still up to
interesting
us,
problem.
no matter what.
It's still at the
whether or not we
discretion
wanna
of the
approve
board
or
whether to
deny it.
approve an event or not,
Alright, let's
so.
keep going.
All right, so we'll keep going here. Application fees. You have a new fee schedule for this?
What do you want, 255 what, 12?
255-12?
Fee schedule is the last page of the application packet. Just so you could reference it.
Thank you.
So this is so it's 350, 650, and 2,500.
We changed that to 4,000.
Wow, I'm confused.
Right, the numbers will change, for the, and then the, application filing fee for the small gathering, not-for-profit is 150, and large and mass is 350.
What did we
Where,
recommend?
where's the application though?
Application.
Because this doesn't, it doesn't say it in the
We
two
have them.
fifty-five.
They gave it to
It's right here.
Yeah.
Here's the application. We need another application.
Were there some over there?
Wait, where
Can
are
you
we,
guys
the
share?
last page of the application?
Yeah.
The last
That's the
page of
last
the
page.
application.
What was our recommendations on this?
You are looking to put it in the code.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the difference will be now, a large gathering will be up to 4,000,
Right, 4,001 or more.
and then the mass will be 4,001
So this is
Right.
4,001.
Plus. or more.
Right, or more.
And I believe the chief wanted to change 255-12C with, the 90 days of being denied for the mass gathering to know if they don't
No late
submit it
fee.
in the 180, they're automatically denied.
No late fee at all for that.
Right,
Right.
right.
Gotta
That's
get
it.
in.
I think that's an easy fix.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
So in here, we would put late application fee, $20
So
per day, and then
So
no,
for a mass
no
gathering
late.
over 4,000, you have to have it 6 months prior
Gotcha.
to the event. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Right.
Are you guys hearing this from Business Advisory?
No consideration.
Yes.
Okay, anything over 4,000, if you do not submit the application 6 months prior to the event, the application will not be submitted, not be accepted, and you may not hold your event.
Anything over 4,000.
Yes.
As far as the blackout goes, maybe you wanna say, no two mass gatherings on the same date or something like that.
I don't even think, I think it's at the discretion of the board. I mean, if you're having one in Wading River and one out in Jamesport, it may not interfere with each other. I think it's gotta be on a case-by-case
that Duck Pond Day.
basis.
You're not gonna have the manpower to do
Right,
two
it
mass
depletes
gatherings, so
personnel
that's
for
up to the
sure.
board,
Right.
Yeah, so I think on a case-by-case basis
regardless
it
of
could
where
be.
they are.
I think that's fair.
All right, so we're okay with that, you
But what
guys?
about the cost of all this? Doing that yet?
And then I know you guys had talked about the whether there's an amendment to the application, that there's a fee involved. The amendment will now be, not, if something has to go back to the board, a resolution has been passed, there's a change to the application, and it needs to go before the board again, that's what will trigger the amendment to the application.
Where are you?
I'm on 255-12D.
Oh, God, you have to skip. Page is that?
That's
12.
Page 12.
I think for you, Bob, it may be 11. On
Okay.
yours, it's 11. So it will now be any mass gathering application submitted within in less, in 180 days will be denied, correct?
Correct.
I'm gonna repeat that again. Any mass gathering at any time for the full event that has 4,001 or more people in the application, if it is not submitted 6 months in advance, it will be denied. Everybody is on board with
Yep.
that?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's not at the time or what hour, it's for the full event.
4,000 or more.
4,001 or more,
Or more.
all right?
Wait, so
If you have 4,000, you're
You're
good.
good.
Wait a minute,
I'm
at any
counting.
given,
I'm counting with the clicker.
4,000 at any given time.
No, for an event that will have 4,000 people at it is considered a mass gathering and must be submitted 6 months in advance.
I don't love it, but I get why they
But,
want it.
I mean, for fire marshal, for police, and then also be able to say, if you have 2 people that wanna have an event the same time on that day, unless you have both of them 6 months in advance, you're gonna have to tell one of them they can't have it.
Yeah,
If we're doing it 3 months before, then I know people, they put their event out there, and then they come in waiting for their application. And the part of all of this is to streamline what we're doing, which you guys have been doing, so people will get their approval much earlier. People are not waiting to 30 days before their event or 45 days before their event to get their approval. You'll put your application in, and you'll be given a response in a more of a timely manner. So it works both ways for not only the applicant, but for the town. We have a responsibility in doing that also.
Does it specify in here whether it's 4,000 per day or 4,000 for the overall event over a 2 or 3 day period?
It's for the overall event.
So if they have 1,000 people a day, their application still has to be in 180 days in advance, otherwise it's automatically
If they're having
denied.
a multi-day event
Yep.
with more than 4,000 people, if the event is calling for, it doesn't matter how many days it is, it's still
I disagree
requiring.
with that then.
Yeah.
That makes, that's.
I do
that-
not agree with that.
That
I
doesn't
think
make any
that
sense
it-
whatsoever.
This really needs to be at one time.
Yep.
And it
It's
can-
definitely not gonna be at
How
one
could you
time, it's for the
calculate
event.
how many people are gonna be at an
One
event at
day.
one time?
How do you calculate how
We
many
could do
people
by
are
day.
going to
Your
show up to the
overall
event?
is-
We
Your
could do,
overall
we could do
plan
by
is
day.
Well, do you-
People come
Yeah.
in and out of the
We
event
can compromise
throughout
and
the
do by
time
day.
that the event runs.
Okay,
So-
is that agreeable to everybody? We can compromise and
per
do
day?
by day, per
Per
day.
day?
So it's, if you're having 10,000 people at the event, but it's 5,000 each day, then we could do that. If you're having 6,000 people at the event, it's 3,000 each day, it's large, not massive.
help
So
the
it's on
dark side.
per day, especially if you run a multi-day event.
Right, like Bob said,
Okay,
it's a whole month.
yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Or
help
more.
time runs, like, so when you're doing runs, okay? And you know that there is 300 people coming from 10 to 11, there's no bands, and that was a really good point, that you made. There's no bands, they're running, it's a time trial, they're out. The next group comes in an hour, they're out.
But Bob, it doesn't matter to the town and the way we process it, that's my point. It matters to the way you run your event, but as far as the town goes, whether you have 300
But shouldn't
people
we
there
be-
at one,
I
if you have
I
300, let me
understand.
just finish. If you have 300 people there at one time, or you have 700 people at one time, it matters on how many people you're gonna have there on the day. Because that's how we judge it. You may say you're having 4,000 people at your event, the next person's having 4,000 people at their event, they're a mile apart. Now the town is judging it. Well, this event's only having 350 people per hour, this is having 4,000 all at one time. Then we need to make a decision how we're going to do that. So we need to know the size of the event, and we take it in totality. And then it's up to the board to decide whether to grant permission or not for it.
Okay, so here's a question, so what triggers the 4,000, and when you have.
But Barbara, you're just worried about the day the application has to be submitted, is that what this is about?
Well, here's what I'm concerned about, okay? And I understand exactly what you're saying, but if I'm having 4,000 people for the day, but I'm only having 500 at a time, do I now have to apply 180, am I on the 180 days?
Correct,
Why?
because that's what the town's requesting.
Because we look at the
No, you're
overall number,
requesting it,
we
but you're
said
making
that.
a judgment, and you use the word judgment, but it's absolutely
We already had
critically
this
wrong.
discussion and we
Yes.
all
How do you
agreed.
calculate how many
We all
people are
agreed.
gonna be
I
at
just
an
we
gave
coming
Carol,
back?
I'm gonna
at
give
a
you
certain
another
time?
example.
Well, I think we're in
No,
agreement.
wait, I just wanna give Carol an example because she deserves an example because she's processing these. If somebody is doing runs, okay, and they're doing 500 people an hour, okay, and they're doing it for 8
Well-
hours, okay, now they have 6,000 people, okay? But there's no band, they run, they leave, the next
Are you
group
sure
comes.
that they leave? Cause
Okay.
they might stay, they might come
Wait a
early
second.
for a
Carol,
half an
wait a
hour, they
second.
might sit in the
No,
parking
you're
lot on their
making a-
phone.
You're making a judgment and you
You
shouldn't be
can't
making a
judge.
judgment.
Let me just, okay, let's just stop for a second. We know, we have our fire marshal here who has been out and has been this, he says that it is something that occurs here. We're not looking for the best case scenario here, we have to plan for the worst case scenario. And when we're making determinations on this, we're looking at the worst case scenario that can happen, and that's what we're preparing for. So that's why we're doing, and we're in agreement that it doesn't have to be for the overall days of the event. We're willing to say for each day of the event. So if you have a 3-day event and you're having 3,000 people at each day of the event, we're not gonna consider it a mass gathering, because during during that day, it's just the 3,000 people. I think that's a fair enough compromise. I think
Let
6
me-
months out is reasonable to be able to process everything. And as Craig says, and as the chief says, whoever's putting in this one event is not the only event. There's tons of other events going on in the town, and we have to be able to use the resources in the town wisely, because there's the health, safety, and welfare, the buildings that they're inspecting, the police are out doing other things, so it's not just, we don't have one person dedicated to this, we need to do it within the confines of what the services we can provide.
And let me tell you by experience, because my son was in the mud run, and my daughter, and her friend, and his other friend that wasn't in the mud run, and myself, and then the kid that he was running with, 5 people from their family came, they had the human ball that they were running in, and they had the, bouncy thing, and all kinds of other stuff going on, so there may be only a few people in the run, but the other family's coming, and they're hanging out,
Having an
waiting
all-day
for the.
event. I don't want, you know
So-
what,
Yeah.
now you guys are getting into the event business, which I don't know if anybody has experience. And all I'm saying, and I understand it, I understand your worst case scenario, and you make a really good point, if there's a band, people are gonna stay all
Well,
day.
it's not just bands,
Yeah.
it's like
It
what
could be-
Jody
it
even
could
just
be
said. We've got
anything.
vendors and other things going on, and people, a lot of people will come and leave, but a lot of people also come and stay.
I
They
understand.
bring friends who want it and family who wanna watch them, and then they're sitting there and enjoying, and especially if it's a beautiful day, and you're in a nice spot, and people are, staying there for a while, for a few hours, as opposed to just coming and going. And that's what I run into and what we see when we're out there.
And I think the board is in agreement on
We're in
this, I think
agreement.
that's, I
Gotta
think,
be a
let's,
already
let's
went
move
over
on,
this.
Gotta
let's
be.
move on.
You can't keep
So
going
that's,
back.
what else?
I have one question, sorry.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
On,
No questions
on
allowed.
D.
D for which section?
12, yes,
Okay.
255-12B.
Mhm.
It says, the second to last line, it says amendments to the fire safety plans. It's the first place,
Well, amendments that are made by our
Yeah.
request, not by the request.
Right,
Right.
right, we had, that was when we put in last time, so
Right.
if somebody has a
no,
change.
but my point was, is that this is the first place in this whole application that it mentions anything about fire safety plans, and I'm wondering if that should be
I think it's in part of,
something
it's,
in the requirements in the beginning. It
I
talks
think-
about.
It's in D,
I think it's in D. And if it's not in D, then we'll
Okay,
include it,
that was
okay?
my only question, because I didn't catch it in there when I was skimming this
If
quickly
not, we'll
this morning, trying to,
Bob, we can just make
Finding
sure
it.
that it's in there.
it talks about, comes close to talking about it in a couple of different spots, but it doesn't really.
You mean actually the words, fire
Well,
safety
yeah, but I
plan.
mean, because in the application, we require that they submit it, the code requires that they submit a plan for approval. And I'm just thinking now, my note that I saw here is that,
We
that's
include it as
something
the
we
fire
needed
safety.
that needs to be in the code itself directly.
Okay.
Hey, can I go backwards and just address?
No.
E? Well, it's just one quick point, it's the privilege language.
Okay, which?
So it's on 12, item E, page 12, item E at the very top. It just talks about this being a privilege, but, clearly when you read the purpose of the town code, you actually go to 255-1. It talks about this in no way, I'll read it for you, it says, in no way interferes with the right of public assembly. This is strictly for the purpose of regulating traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian. So, it's almost like it's a right, but the town's saying it's a privilege.
Bob, I will let you address that. It's your
It
right
is a
to
privilege.
assemble, it's your right to assemble, but.
You can deny it, but it's,
255-1 compared
is it
to
a privilege?
255-11E.
Because we're granting the permit. Because you fall outside of the 100 people, because what is it, under 100 people gathering, you don't,
Well, 255-1 applies solely to parades and assemblies.
That's the whole
Not-
purpose of this.
Not to special events. That's Article 1, application, so. Reference therein applies to Article 1, not Article 2. That's the distinction, and it recognizes the fact that people do have a right to assemble and gather and rely upon their rights that are expressed by the First Amendment. Article 2 is
special
if someone's looking to do something on a piece of property that's not otherwise allowed by zoning. It's not a right to assemble, you're now doing something that's a little bit different. You're gathering, you're not using you're not gathering for a parade, you're not gathering on a public place for assembly. You're doing something that's
a little bit different than First Amendment, I'm gathering on the street corner and saying I wanna talk about something or protest something. Now you're using a private piece of property or a town piece of property for profit. It's not allowed for that use, and it's a little bit of a different reason why.
But this is just saying that the permit's required for that.
Are you just have a
55-1.
problem with the language being in there, the privilege?
To me, it just sets the
Because
tone.
when I bring the lawsuit, I'm gonna put it in anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It just sets the tone for the whole.
So it doesn't matter if it's in the
discussion.
code or not, it'll be in my lawsuit when I go to shut somebody down.
We
so
don't have
worry
to
about it.
grant anybody the permit. That's the point. We're not required to grant somebody the permit.
So-
We can't deny somebody's ability to gather.
But then it goes to what reasons can you deny it? Like, if there's a reason, if it's unsafe, yes. But this privilege gives you any reason to deny the permit.
And, correct.
But you have
Correct.
a right to file a permit, and as long as you're complying with all safety guidelines, why wouldn't you get the permit?
I think that it needs to be open-ended, we can't think of every scenario.
But it's not a
events on that
privilege,
day.
every scenario should be outlined.
Because you have some bad
You know what,
actors.
well,
I mean,
let's move on,
we
where
had
I think it's a
couple of-
grappling with the,
Yeah, you know what, we had a couple of applicants that came in, and even though it was the same application, it was the same property, and it was, Rose's restaurant one day, and then the next month it was something
yes,
else.
yes,
And
yes,
it was,
yes, yes.
they kept putting different people's names on the applications instead of the same one, but we knew it was the same people, cause when we had the public hearing, we asked them if it was the same people, and they said it was, so they were playing games, so that's why we're saying it's a privilege. If you know, are forthright with us, and you say that this is what I am, this is who I am, this is the event I'm having, then fine. But if you have an event and you're a bad actor, and the police has problems with you, the fire marshal has problem with you, and then you come back the next year and file the same application under somebody else's name, it's our privilege and right to say,
Yeah, I know.
we think you're with the same person, or to question you as to whether or not you're just putting it under someone else's name.
Okay, now we have to
Well,
look at the
Okay, let's go on,
application.
let's go on to the application.
Wait, we're done with the codes?
Yep.
Wow.
There's
Great.
a bunch
you
of
wanna
things we just
belabor it
jumped
longer?
over,
Wait,
but it's gonna
wait,
take
what happened to
forever.
page 13? Everybody's good?
Page 13 is which one?
The only thing I
The
see
code.
is the,
I wanna make sure we're not missing anything.
It's the liquor, but nobody changed anything
No,
on
it
that.
shouldn't have been changed.
That's the
That was-
same.
That was the
Alright.
same language.
And then the penalties is
boom.
just that failure to obtain the permit, there'll be consequences for for holding an event without a permit, was added. But I don't think that was added, that was already in there.
Which one?
On penalties for offenses, the failure to obtain a special.
5520.
Yeah, I think a
That
lot
just
of
got
this was,
underlined, but that was-
unfortunately, when I was asked to put this together today, I went back to an old draft
But
that
that
had
was
been
in
done
there the
last year, and
last
I just quickly did it, so
Just,
it's in there. The only thing I do
Sorry.
wanna mention on 255-20 penalties, fire marshal brought it up to me when we were talking just briefly this morning. This just talks about a violation of any of the provisions of this article. So, well, what about where someone is granted a permit and they violate the conditions of the permit? Can that be a penalty? And I said, well, you know, that's a good point, because we really don't, well, other than shutting them down, we don't have, I think under this provision, we kinda don't have the ability to penalize them and bring them to court. So I was thinking that adding some language, and again, if this is just really quickly off the cuff, and it would probably be better with drafted to say, after shall, or a violation of any of the conditions of a permit as required, so that if they violate any of the conditions of the permit, that would also allow us the right to ticket them.
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
Fair.
Really quick, I'm sorry to hop back here. 255-15, the alcoholic beverages. Now, there is one policy that the town of Riverhead has that is not in the 255, and it's a liquor liability policy. It's about 6 pages long, Carol. And it states, and I don't have it on me, I apologize. I don't have it on me either.
the alcohol policy for the town?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Did you need
So,
to see it?
yeah, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Is that there?
Just like reference, thank you. So, it really is a terrible policy.
We're not addressing that whole policy right now.
Yeah.
We're just getting through the 255. If it's something, if that's something that's inconsistent,
Right this second, there is something that's inconsistent, so it's right at the back page here where it's the, signature page that needs to be notarized. It says, these items are required at the time of application submission. So, insurance policy, which again, going back to an $8,000 insurance policy for the day. Tips training certificates, I have no idea who's gonna be serving my alcohol until about 15 days, 20 days, possibly 30 days
Chief,
prior.
how do you wanna, with the tips training, how does that work with the,
Contact CAP, they do the training for you.
and what if they don't know who's gonna be serving it? I don't think anybody can serve that isn't tips trained. I mean,
Well, on
that's up to
town
the applicant.
property-
Let me just finish. That's up to the applicant to make sure that who's ever serving it is tips trained. I mean, it's not, the onus isn't on the town to do that, it's on the applicant to make sure that they're tip trained. And I think that can go back to also with
what
completing
your
that
concern
it will
is?
be done. If something can't be done
Yeah.
up until that date, I think as long as that we know that on the day of the event it's being done and the applicant is signing off that they will comply with that, I
Okay.
think we can do that, because I understand where there's sometimes not the ability to do it in the time to complete the application, but we need to have something that says
I
that
like
they
that
will
idea.
comply with it before the
Just
day of the event.
An affidavit saying that all servers will have their tip
Right.
certification on their body at the time that they're serving alcohol, so that if the police say, hey, you just served alcohol, the
Right.
person that.
Yes.
And then like listing who's staffing the events,
I don't think that's important, as long as they have a
We
tips
don't
card.
need to know that, right?
Affidavit,
No.
everybody
No,
will
we
be
don't,
tip
correct.
certified, and they will
But you
carry
guys
the
can
card
address
with
that
them.
at another meeting.
That's up for me.
But I think we're in agreement with both of us.
Yeah, but you're talking about tips trained even on private property? I mean, that's,
If where the town is granting you a special permit, we're giving you permission to do something that's not, you're not permitted to
Okay,
do
I get
without
it.
the special permit, so yes.
Private property for a wedding is different than open to the public.
yeah, no,
And it's
I
also a different
totally
permit
agree. I mean,
completely through SLA.
Yeah,
For a private
okay.
party, for a wedding would be a catering permit, and then individual
catering
caterers
would be
would be.
different.
All right,
We're good.
I'm gonna go
Another
on
year.
to the application here, okay? So we've streamlined the application. Yes, it just looks complicated, it really isn't. So it's just basically the event, the day of the event, the tax map number, the total number of acreage, and it can be an estimate of the acreage or the parcel, the event location, the applicant, who is ever applying, the contact person, if they are different from the applicant, because somebody will have, be the event planner applying for the application, and there's somebody else that they want us to contact for asking questions. The owner of the property, we need to know that. The reason we have the person residing in Suffolk County, that has been determined that if they need to be served, they need to be a resident of Suffolk County, and that's just for protection of the town.
But is that a law? I'm just curious. 'Cause
It's something we
do get a
require.
few people that aren't Suffolk County residents, we get quite a few of them, at least at my location. And I'm just thinking, like, today, with the world of service and serve processing, you just send a serve processor to someone in Nassau County. You can serve them, you're not restricted to
Well,
just serving people in Suffolk,
That's
right?
sorta correct.
That's why I'm asking.
Not exactly correct, and I don't wanna get into legal details with respect to service, because then I would be giving them an issue we have, but,
But it's onerous on the town to not have
If we had to
that.
bring a Supreme Court action, we could go
But Bob,
serve
how
them
do,
anyway.
how do people do events, like an event company, go up and down
It's challenging.
the East Coast?
Right.
And number one, and do events. Number two is, how do we attract different types of events here that may come from out of town, whether they're from New Jersey or Ohio, or, how do we do that?
The
They have
property
to be-
owner, could take responsibility and work it out with whoever they're leasing the property to. It shouldn't be the onus on the town, right? You own a piece of property, somebody comes in, you need to have somebody from Suffolk County, then the owner of the property or
Who's ever renting the property?
whoever owns, right, wherever that's occurring, then they could certainly put them there. I mean, it's up to them to know that they'll be served with whatever the event
At the end
is.
of the day, did you solve anything? I'm just thinking out loud, because say I put myself in a Suffolk County resident, we got a
Right.
group from Boston.
Right.
And we sign it, so you serve me, big deal.
Right.
Right.
I'm not responsible,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, you are.
I'm responsible for
The event, sure, right?
No,
You're-
I'm just responsible for getting
You
served.
would be named in it.
I'm
You
just
would
an
be named.
agent.
You would be named.
Yeah, but
How do we do
So
that?
you
I'm
guys-
just,
you
it's just
guys-
a
it looks like
servicing
you
of
shrunk it.
processing.
I'm trying to, because this is the thing when we have out-of-state or out-of-county, proponent offering to do an event. We wanna be
Yeah.
able to have some means to serve them should they not
Exactly.
do what they're supposed to do. So the reality is, we just wanted to put it in there so that there's no question the person who's hosting the event, the person whose land it's on, is granted permission to do it, is someone we want who can be served in a justice court setting.
and by justice court, it's a lot easier if we have a
Mhm.
local entity to serve.
So, Bob, the question is, if we had to serve somebody, can we bring somebody back here, let's say they're from Jersey, right? And if they put, because the suggestion with these guys is to put a bond up, so that if we had to serve out of our locality, that it's covered by the bond. Does that make any difference in where that you
No,
can
the
take
bond,
them to our justice court?
The bond is not a service issue, the bond is saying that you didn't do what you're supposed to do, we're
No,
gonna
no,
take
no.
that money. So that's a little different.
Well, no, we can use the bond to go serve them, if they're out of state.
No, you're not.
Correct me if I'm
We
wrong,
can't.
Bob?
No, you wouldn't use a bond to serve somebody, you use a
No, you
bond
use
to
the money.
make them perform, right?
No, it would be a bond to cover the cost if they
See,
needed to be
This is why I
served.
wish I knew about this a little more than.
No, no, no,
yesterday,
but the question is, if, the
Were
reason,
we
the
rushing
reason.
this? I mean, to get it.
Yes, because it has to be done by December 18th. But, Bob, the question is, right, if somebody, we're requiring a Suffolk County resident, because we want to be able to serve them so that somebody shows up in court if there's an issue, right?
The idea was to be able to have a party to serve in the justice court, yes.
Okay, can you?
The bond's not gonna change that.
No, but can you serve somebody outside of Suffolk County, if, say, the person who's running the event, say, the applicant?
Not in the justice court.
You can't, they have to be a Suffolk County resident to serve, to be brought in front of our justice
Well,
court?
if they're a corporation, that's it, you know, that we can serve through the Department of State, we can serve them.
But what about a person?
If they're a Delaware entity, no.
Okay, so that's why we need the Suffolk County resident.
So even if they're a Delaware corporation, you can't bring action against
Not
them?
in justice court.
What other courts are there?
Supreme, we could go to Supreme Court.
I mean, there has to, if there's no mechanism, so how do you attract, you know, if Circus Olay comes in from, California to do Circus Olay in EPCAL, it's like we can't do it because they're not residents of Suffolk County.
We could bring it in Supreme Court if we felt if there was some reason to do that, I guess, I mean, I'm not.
That's why I'm wondering if you need it. And the other thing is, when you serve
Well,
somebody.
we need it because we were looking to make it easier on ourselves to be able to have someone serve, so that's the reason why.
I understand that, I understand that, but you're also limiting
And have some,
the
and have some ability to, you know, have somebody accountable, I guess.
But you may have the wrong party, so it'll go back to the group in Boston.
That's your argument in the court of law that we got the wrong party, but,
Well, but I'm asking, you're an attorney, I'm not, so.
I
you
can't
gotta-
give you advice, I can give
I-
my client
I,
advice.
you know what I'm gonna do, I'm going, let us leave this in here. Bob, you
I
can
feel-
give it some,
You want it out, obviously.
yes, that's what they want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can take it under advisement, I can
Yes,
go to
thank
the
you.
town board and give them legal advice. How about
Okay,
that?
thank you. Person responsible, for on-site management at the event, the attorney, if applicable. And then this is the total number of people per day, and it just kind of breaks out the makeup of what you have here. I think total number of people per day, and do we also wanna put on here, expected amount per hour?
Sure.
Okay? Duration, and this includes setup and breakdown, duration of the event, that's the event itself, and then dates of setup, prior and
Did you
after.
say you're gonna put expected amount of people per hour?
Correct.
Do we need that if we're only saying for the entire day?
Yes, we do, to be able to, adjust, so like I was saying before, if you have two events with 4,000 people each, and somebody has waves of people coming in, and somebody has somebody there the whole day, then we may be able to, approve two events on the same day, if our police department can handle it, as opposed to two events with 4,000 people in and out within 2 hours.
And what about for people that do events where they don't know the expected number of vendors or exhibitors or animal care?
You can put unknown, it's still going to have to go into the
Like a
plan for the
to be
fire.
determined or something like that?
Right, but it's still going to have to go, it's gonna be in your event description, because you still have to, we plan on having 15 vendors, a food court, or, whatever done. It still needs to be in your event description, and it still needs to be in the description given to the fire marshal. And then event description, signage, this is part of what we have, fireworks, public safety plan,
I'm sorry, Laura, what Craig, we should probably add and fire safety there?
public and fire safety plan.
Yeah.
Security company, not applicable. This is my other question. Security company, parking and parking. We need to just know the name of the firm.
Craig, I'm sorry, going back to public fire and safety plan, there are some things in the fire and safety plan that aren't 100% known to be submitted with the application or at the time of the application.
Such as?
Such as, in his fire and safety
Site.
plan, he has, in there, the number of vendors, the names of the vendors.
Well, we've
there-
already gone back that we don't need the names of the vendors, we've already struck that.
Okay.
But-
I don't have the fire and safety plan in front of me right now, but there are a couple of things in there that are difficult to.
But I think that's where we go back to the event description, and then we go back to, we'll have approximately 20 vendors versus we're gonna have approximately 100 vendors. I mean, I think off by 1 or 2 vendors isn't a big deal, but when somebody's saying, and this goes back to what Bob's saying, if somebody puts in an application and puts in the application that's not what shows up that day, that's gonna be an issue,
So you
and.
feel a good approximation is appropriate then?
Yes, and all applications will be judged on what they're giving to us when they apply for an event again. So as I said, if somebody has an application in that says 20 vendors and there's 100 vendors in there, then my guess would be there will be no more applications accepted from that vendor.
Right, and an event organizer should know as they're getting vendors.
Right,
That they
and-
know that there'll be over 20 or whatever.
And to go back to, if there are amendments, then it goes back to the town clerk, because there is a bit of give and take in this, that you would go back and say, whatever, I was gonna have 30, now I'm having 60, that there's a change.
Because the code requires specific things in the fire safety plan, which is why I asked for that various information. 'Cause
Right.
the information that we generally need in order to assess the plan, make sure that it covers all the areas that
Right.
it's supposed to.
But does it matter to you, like, if they have 22 vendors instead of 23 vendors? I mean, is that a big?
We want an idea how many vendors are gonna be there, so that we know, and
So
again,
within,
it
like,
goes along with the
5%,
site plan, so
2%?
that we can see, where they are. We get there, and quite often, what's been proposed and what actually is there varies. As long as, if you're telling me you're having 10 vendors and I get there and there's 50, well, we've got an issue. If
Right.
there's 12, you had a few
More people.
late comers, as long as everything else we can work everything out, and keep the fire marshal that's doing the inspection, is happy and feels that everything is still safe, it's not an issue. But if we get there and, there are issues, then
And I
there's
think
gonna
that
be a lot
goes
of
back
unhappy people.
to the communication between fire marshal, police, and town clerk.
Right.
So if you go to an event and what was supposed to be there, you thought was gonna be there, is not there, it goes back to the town clerk, and then that gets registered so that we can track these things, which I think, has been a little bit of a challenge as.
I've gone to events and things were not correct, and I've made people move everything.
Yeah, no.
Because I was not going to allow it to open.
Right.
And they were not happy, and I said, well, these are your choices. You either move as I'm telling you need to do, which is how it was on your plan, or you can pack up and go home.
And as it should be.
And, excuse me,
Yeah.
you try and work with people.
No, I
you
know that.
It's when people don't wanna do what they said they were going to do.
Security company, just a name, total number of people, beforehand, they'd been asking for workers' comp and all this other stuff, that's been taken out. Same with parking, alcoholic beverages, we know what's involved with that. Garbage, trash, rubbish removal, waste sanitary, storage. A licensed electrician, that is either applicable or non-applicable. Is that part of the fire safety plan also? Does this need to be on here, or is that part of the fire safety plan?
No, it's not really that, but when we go, if they're doing a lot of electrical work, they're supposed to have an electrician.
Okay.
Who's licensed, that's doing it.
Well, that's what I'm okay, so a copy of the license is required.
And I believe that's something Laura Calamita has always
And have
asked
we had
for
an issue
also.
with having to do that, with get the copy of the license?
I've never had a license given to me.
Okay.
But I've never had anybody really fill out that they had
When
an
we
electrician.
go there, if we're not happy with what we see, we make them fix it.
Okay.
I have pulled out the town
So,
electrical.
I'm just saying on this
inspector
one, because
to
it's
join
on
me.
here, should we allow them to, prior to doing any work, that they provide?
furnish the
Yeah, so
license.
that it doesn't make the application incomplete.
It all depends on what they're doing. Some things, yes, they're not gonna need an electrician. A few simple extension cords that are properly run and so forth, and all, but then you get other events,
They need it.
where they need it,
Okay.
you know? I mean, it all depends on what they're doing.
You can leave it on here, just put not applicable.
Yeah, and that's, and you can do not applicable, but what I'm saying is right now it says copy of Suffolk County license required. So to make this application complete, you need to submit that. You may not have that 180 days before. So what I'm saying is we can say that it just needs to be submitted prior to commencing any work at the event.
And the alcohol beverage, under there it says attached permit. I'm assuming we're gonna strike that and keep the must supply proof of application within 15 days, because that's what the requirement is from the SLA.
And I think with that, if there is no license received within those 15 days, what are we doing? There will be no alcohol served? Alcohol will not be permitted at the event?
Really,
I mean,
that's the first step.
if they,
But
You
I'm
know, if
saying,
you
what
don't-
we're saying, if you don't provide us with an alcohol permit 2 weeks before the event will not be allowed to serve alcohol. That's what I'm
No,
saying.
well, so, I wouldn't say that, because sometimes the SLA is notorious. As organized as you may be as an event.
All right, how about we do
promoter.
this? How about there's a $600 charge if you don't get it to us 15 days before?
they're not saying the permit, Dean, they're saying the application.
Application.
So I apply
Oh,
through the
as long as you
computer
apply.
and you just print
But
out
when
the
you have to have
application
it.
and show proof that you
Yeah, yeah.
applied
Okay, that's
for
fine.
the
We get it.
application. They're not, the SLA is not
Yeah,
gonna
I
give us
just
the
read
permits
attached
until the day
permit.
before.
But you just
Okay.
have to.
So we need to show, there needs to
For the
be proof
application.
shown that,
That they applied at the very least.
and so they
Right,
have to have
right.
applied on the day
That's
that,
fine.
so they have to apply the day that they're submitting this application.
No.
That's far,
You,
yeah.
okay, so
when-
you're not even permitted to apply that far in advance
So
with the
that's what I'm
SLA.
asking, what's the maximum amount that you can apply, 30 days?
I think 30 days is what I
Okay.
normally do.
All right, so then
I'll
30,
double check that, I mean, just
Pretty
to,
sure it's
just to be
30.
certain.
all right, to
Are
be
you-
certain, we'll do 21 days,
There you go.
okay? So you need to submit the proof of application 21 days prior to the event. Otherwise,
And we're not requiring the permit anymore, just the application.
no, the permit still has to come before the event.
The permit will never come before the event.
Great.
Oh, no, okay.
No.
No? Okay.
For North
We
Mead
did with
South,
East End
I got
Park.
my event permit 3 PM on Friday.
Yeah, there's no
But do you always
guarantee.
have, do you always have to have the permit before you serve alcohol at the event?
Absolutely, you have to have
Okay,
it
so
displayed.
this is what I'm saying, so
It has to be displayed
before
at
you
the event.
pour something at an event,
Yeah.
that has to be sent to the town
Okay.
clerk. I don't care if it's by email, I don't care, whatever it is, but it has to be registered in the town of Riverhead before a drink is poured at the event.
Via email's okay?
Via
That's
email will be
fine,
okay,
that's
yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, 'cause
That's
it'll
how
be
they,
date-
it's how
it'll
we
be
get
date
them.
And on
time
hand,
stamp.
It has to be at the
Yeah,
event.
that's all.
Well,
we
that,
have
yeah,
to
that's,
give it.
that goes without saying, but it has to be here beforehand. All right, special event checklist, this is just a summary of everything. This is not an additional page to the application, because this is, I know you guys kept saying we have a 25-page application. The application is really just these couple pages. This is a checklist of things that need to be completed.
This is like Carol's cheat sheet.
Yeah, and also for the applicant, and then the other ones are the affidavits, and Mike, one question is, the first affidavit, which is the disclosure affidavit, does that need to be in there if you have this one on the checklist? Cause this one is just about if you've given campaign contributions to anybody
Oh, yeah, where
in
is
the
that?
town to have to apply for the
Yes.
event. It makes no sense.
$20 is
And it's not even like the minimum you can do
that
for
is
a
the-
donation. I don't know where this came from.
Where is that?
It's the Town of Riverhead
Item 3.
disclosure affidavit.
That is just disclosing that you're solely applying and nobody influenced you in the town. So that would be under the,
What is that all about?
I'm not familiar with it, so.
All right,
I
just
mean,
take a
but
look
I'm
at it,
sure-
see.
I'm sure it's there because it's probably required by law.
Okay.
Required by some statutory provision, so.
Okay.
That's what I'm assuming,
I'm
too.
guessing it was added to it because of some statute, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, but they have about campaign contributions here, so that isn't even the minimum contribution, so it at least should be campaign minimums. It's
I'm
bizarre.
not sure where the form came from.
Just take a look
Okay,
at it.
I wasn't involved
Okay.
in
Oh,
all the
this
prior
is just, this is
255s.
copy and paste,
Yeah.
I mean, this is like,
Bob is gonna take a look at it.
okay.
Hopefully.
And then the
can
next
get
one is
into it.
owner's endorsement of affidavit. This is just saying, if you have it on, that the property owner is permitting you. Inspection,
Hey, I got a quick question about this, because sometimes it's tough to get these owners to, sign this and get an original with a notarized copy. So is that a requirement? So when you file an SLA, they have the same issue, right? Because you have to have owner's permission, but they don't require the notarized signature. So I don't know if it's like a legal issue that you're doing it, or just, someone did it and it's always been that way and no one looked at it.
But are you taking a copy from last year, whiting it out, how do we know?
We
that
just
he's
wanna
not
know that you have
approving that
permission
this
to
year?
use the land that the owner, that you.
But if
that
you're
you-
renting,
Date
if
has
you're
to be
leasing or renting
Right,
land,
right.
right?
Because they
Why do
have-
you, then
was it
you
Marcus
have taken
signs
ownership of that
everything? They got a million
property
too.
as at leasing it or
Is it really
renting it.
Right.
approving it, or
So
they just
why are
have a
you
million
going
copies
to
and
the
says
owner
here,
or
turn
their
this in?
trust or their,
So
know,
we
grandson?
Well, that's
require
unique situation
original.
with him, but it doesn't apply across the board.
But so
Right.
New York State
Yeah, but
handles
how-
it,
yeah, how
is
do you
they just
know
say
that?
landlord's permission. So it's one document and it's not
Uh-huh.
notarized, because landlord's permission would cover all those cases, right? So if in my event, I'm the landlord, but I'm not the property owner.
Mhm.
But technically, the property owner can't even grant you access. He doesn't have the keys, he doesn't have the authority to. I'm in possession of the property. So when I
Well,
looked at,
I don't think that's true, but go ahead.
so when you look at
'Cause
New York
he still has
State-
rights to, ownership of it, to grant permission, but probably subject to whatever your rights are under
right,
the lease.
based on my
but-
lease,
but-
right. So the,
I don't think you can
way
say
New York
that
State
statement.
handles it is they just say landlord's permission, and it's a simple
So
form.
what, so
It's
what is it you're
simple.
looking to do?
Just take this, instead of making it
So
owners.
instead of making it notarized, you just wanna have a signature?
To me, I would
Well,
think
does it
instead
have-
of owners,
Could it be landlord?
be
tenant?
landlords, and get rid of the notarization. That would be my suggestion.
I'm sorry, say that again, so landlord's the same as the owner, so I don't know what the
No,
difference is.
landlord is not landlord is, the lessee,
Tenant.
tenant, right,
So
so
you
can.
want a tenant's endorsement?
Whoever the landlord is, so if.
No, if the owner is the same as the landlord.
Well, let's say
Theoretically, I mean, if I'm a landlord, I have some rights to possess in order to give it to somebody under a tenancy, so they're one and the same.
But
I'm not sure if I'm following.
I own a piece of property, I lease
Right.
it to somebody, right?
Yeah.
They wanna hold a special event,
Correct.
event there, right?
Right.
And so they're renting out, they're renting out I don't own the property, I'm leasing the property
Right.
from somebody, and I
Mhm.
wanna give permission to somebody else to use my property,
Right.
and they're gonna have a special event there. So
Right.
now I have to find the owner to agree to it, or I have the rights on that property because I lease the property?
Well, I don't know if your rights on the lease allow you to do.
That's what I'm wondering, so that's
you're
that's
doing
that's
as far
why.
as a special event. I don't know that.
Okay, that's why I'm wondering, okay.
As the town, I don't know what your lease allows you to do, and whether the landlord would have
Okay, so
any
that's what-
problems with you using it for something beyond the specified use in the lease, and then if that creates some kind of a liability issue for the landlord. So how would I know that?
Then that's fine. So then the other question comes, if the owner signs this, to have it notarized also?
And if you don't want the notarization, I guess the reason for the notary is so that we have an ability to say that an official document is offered to us and we can rely upon it. I mean, that's the reason. I mean, you can do it the other way, the false statement made herein shall be punishable by.
That's what
by-
you have
by-
for this whole
I
document.
mean, we can do that as well, if that's
Because
gonna
then we know.
make me,
Yeah.
but
All right,
that would-
we're still gonna need a date. And then, when it's dated, we're not gonna use something from 2 years ago to get
But now you can
permission
use
if
a
I'm going forward.
photocopy, because that's what happens.
No, they
He'll
want the original.
He'll scan, oh, you still need an original.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just easier not getting it notarized. It's always something I
Yeah.
chase, and I
Yeah,
see
because the person
other
may not
event
have it.
promoters chase.
Yeah.
So if we can get rid of just the
The notary part,
notarization,
yeah.
just take it into
That's up to you,
consideration.
Bob.
All right.
And then the other ones are just the typical bits, hold harmless, inspection,
That's the one they have the issue with, the consent.
consent, hold harmless, and you'll look into that. And the only one we need is that one more will be added, that they've received the health department certificates. And I think that
But
just,
I'm
not that we've
I'm not putting that on
received
the
it.
applicant, am I
That's
putting that
gone,
in
I
the
thought.
application, or am
What-
I putting it in here?
I think it should be an affidavit, David, in the application, the same with everything else.
Yeah, I think
That-
we were striking it from the 255 and we were
Yeah.
just putting it as an affidavit in here,
Yeah.
in the application, right?
So basically, that they're responsible, it can be in here, Bob, it could be part of this area here with the application, that they will get all pertinent, the,
Yeah, someone, if you can
Yeah.
copy it, Diane,
Yeah.
I'll
look it
give
up.
you, yeah.
But that's not gonna be part of the codification.
Oh,
It's not being codified.
these are yours.
The Suffolk County Health Department?
No, the application form.
It's not.
No, not part of the application form, just an affidavit stating that I understand my
But we do have in
responsibilities
here
and
that
what
they're
I
responsible
get
for
a-
getting all
There's
of the
gonna be a
necessary permits.
checkbox, we're gonna make a
Right, Bob?
checkbox whether you need a health department.
So since we
or
have,
not.
since we
Yes,
have the,
to make it simple.
in the code, we have that you're required to get all necessary permits.
It currently, the code says, this is where we had a little bit of debate, the provisions of this article are not exclusive, and an applicant remains subject to all other applicable government permits and approvals as may be required,
So-
including but not limited to approvals, permits from Suffolk County Department of Health Services, New York State Department of Health, and, I mean,
So can we just put that,
reads a little bit weird,
can we,
but,
can we just put that in here? And when they sign off on their application, they're, just to make them aware? All right, that's my only thing.
And I just have a question, public safety plan, it says, see pages 12 to 15 for the
They're not in here.
requirements, but they're not in here.
That's,
Is that just because?
that's just a
It's
just
in
a
there,
learner's
but it's
error.
not.
We can do
But
that.
not-
Yeah.
okay.
These were just
that's-
things we were changing,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure
I
we
didn't,
were still
I didn't
getting
touch
it.
yours.
No, I just wanted to make sure people were still getting it, so
And
they
that's
know what
your
they had to
public
do.
safety plan.
That's what
right?
the state requires, yes. State fire code.
It was just, Craig went through great lengths and went through everything and put it out in the plan to make it simpler for applicants, because prior to that, it was a mishmash of trying to go back and forth, so to simplify it, he went through everything,
That's very
and,
clear.
and put through exactly what you need, so I think that it's incredibly helpful. All right, speak now or forever hold your peace, how's that?
Are you guys happy?
Don't do it, don't say a word.
Are you guys happy?
I'm happy, yes. I think it's good.
And would you also let us know if you have, come up with anything that can be streamlined? We will, on your behalf, I think I can commit to this. We will look what it would take to do a required field application, because I know how useful and helpful that will be.
Right, but also with that, just so you can, when you look at just to purchase the software and the yearly, the lease fee for the software and all of that stuff, because it's not as simple as you think. So if you could get that
I don't
information.
think anything, I will look into it and get the full parameter of what we're looking into.
Hey, quick comment, just, I wanna thank everybody, the fire chief and the police chief for meeting with us, and for the town board to even listening when we had a problem as a community, saying, hey, this didn't work for us, you guys, we didn't always agree on everything, but you took some steps and you really dug in, and Bob and Monique, I just thank everybody for sitting here and doing this. It's important for the community, so I appreciate it.
We're
Sure
glad
they're
it's
gonna
over.
enjoy watching.
Yeah.
Pop some popcorn.
One thing I do
Yeah.
wanna say, because I know there was some reference about applications not being timely processed, and I would be remiss if I just let that go by without any comment. The town had adopted a code saying that there was a deadline for the filing this year, so we received in excess of 50 applications to meet the deadline.
Right.
And a decision was made, rather than have 50 applications processed, 50 applications go to the town board in 2 or 3, 4 town board meetings, we would space them out where there wasn't a necessity to address them right away. My office, the fire marshal worked together to make sure that we did that, so I wanna just say, it wasn't a question of not timely processing them. It was a question of the
Overload.
specifics and the way things came in, and to handle them sequentially and logically, so. Cause Laura is extremely diligent in this stuff, was diligent in it, and it wasn't a question of it taking more time. I just wanna make that statement.
Yeah, no, I mean, and she worked with you to
Yes,
fit it
and
in
I
with
said to
everything
her,
else that you do.
I just don't have time to sit down and look at all these at once, and she kept, she and I were talk daily
She
and
kept your
through
sanity.
email. Well, she would tell me, listen, this one's coming up, and then I'd pull it out and start reviewing things, and we'd address it, it just, there's just too much going on.
No, I know.
So,
All
all
right.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification, so we'll get this done, we're gonna have to hold a special meeting, sometime between now and before Monday, Tuesday, for a special meeting to approve the public hearing for this,
Do you guys need this?
so that it can then go, before, so then we will have a public hearing on it on December 17th at our board meeting. Hopefully, it will be okay. If it is okay at that point, we will open it up for public comment, we'll close it, accept it, and then it can be, sent to the state, because that has to be within 10 days for approval, and then this way there's no overlap with the December 18th deadline that we have for what we have in place now. So.
All right. Thanks again,
All right,
everybody.
thank you.
Thank
And
you, guys.
just a first and second to go in executive session for tentative modifications of a contract with AT&T. Channel 22 contractual negotiations, discussion regarding hunting license agreement and matters regarding hiring of an employee.
Motion.
Get all
Thank
that-
you.
Did you get all that, Tim?
Aye.
Don't ask any 255 questions.